What if everything you are seeing right now has already happened? What if light itself can be slowed until it stops completely, and nothing in existence is ever truly still? This isn't science fiction. It is the strange, quiet reality that quantum physics reveals. Today, we are exploring mind-bending truths that challenge everything you think you know about time, space, and your own perception. If you are ready to explore the limits of what reality really is, tap like and subscribe. 1. The collapse of certainty, how observation creates the world. We are indoctrinated from birth into a world of comforting solidity. We are taught that objects are distinct, that they possess definite locations, and that the map of reality is drawn in permanent ink. You believe that your keys are on the table, that your car is in the driveway, and that you are sitting in a chair. You believe that things exist in one place at one time, independent of your gaze. This is the classical view of the universe, a view that treats existence like a giant warehouse of fixed items, sitting quietly on shelves, waiting to be used. It is a tidy, logical, and reassuring model. It is also, according to the strange and terrifying laws of quantum mechanics, a fundamental lie. Buried beneath the surface of the seemingly solid world you touch and taste is a completely different kind of truth. One that is not carved in stone, but smeared across a shimmering landscape of possibility. In the subatomic realm, which forms the very foundation of your body and everything you hold dear, reality does not follow rules so much as it hesitates. It pauses. It weighs its options before deciding which version of existence to present to you. At the heart of this mystery lies a fact that reads like the wildest fiction. A single particle, a fundamental building block of the cosmos, can and does exist in two places at once. This is not a metaphor. It is not a poetic exaggeration or a figure of speech. It is an experimentally verified reality that has been observed and repeated in laboratories around the world, utterly confounding our common sense intuition. We are used to thinking of particles as tiny, microscopic billiard balls, hard, round, and existing at specific coordinates. But the universe does not work like a pool table. In the quantum world, a particle is not a thing. It is a cloud of probability. It exists in a state of superposition, hovering in a ghostly limbo where it is not here or there, but everywhere it could be, all at once. Imagine a coin spinning on a table. While it is spinning, is it heads or tails? It is neither, and it is both. It is a blur of potential. This is the natural state of the matter that makes up your brain, your heart, and the stars above you. Reality, in its default state, refuses to make a decision. It exists as a trembling wave of potentiality, a chaotic ocean of maybe that refuses to settle into is. This state of omnipresent potential persists until a singular catalytic moment occurs, the moment of measurement. This is where the story shifts from strange to unsettling. The universe does not define itself until someone forces its hand. The particle remains in its cloud of probability, occupying multiple locations simultaneously, until the very instant it is observed. At that moment, and not a nanosecond ago, the cloud collapses. The wave of potential vanishes, and the particle snaps into a single definite state, appearing in only one location. This instant transformation from infinite possibility to singular certainty raises the hair on the backs of sciences, because it implies something radical about the nature of existence. It suggests that the universe does not act until you look. It implies that reality is not a pre-written play that you are merely watching. It is an improvisation that requires your participation to unfold. The cosmos does not define itself until you ask it a question. This opens a door not just to scientific strangeness, but to a profound existential vertigo. It suggests that observation, your awareness, your gaze, your consciousness, is not a passive act of witnessing. It is an active act of creation. By simply paying attention, you are forcing the universe to choose a timeline. If this is true, then the boundary between the observer and the observed dissolves. We are not separate from the universe. We are the engine that drives its definition. Consciousness itself may play a fundamental role in shaping the fabric of the cosmos, acting as the collapse engine that turns the ghostly quantum haze into the solid world of experience. This means that the universe is not just a container you live in. It is something you are constantly co-creating. This leads us to a haunting question. If a particle can be in two places at once until it is observed, what does that say about you? You are, after all, made of these particles. Are you solid? Or are you too a cloud of probability waiting to be collapsed? Perhaps the version of you that exists right now is just one of infinite possibilities. A single interference pattern plucked from the void by the act of being seen. It forces us to wonder if we ever truly exist in a singular state, or if we are always scattered, always multiple, always waiting for the gaze of another to tell us where and who we really are. 2. The gaze that binds. How attention shapes reality. We are conditioned to believe that to observe is merely to learn, that seeing is a neutral, passive act. This assumption, the bedrock of classical science, states that watching something unfold doesn't fundamentally alter what it is. However, buried beneath this comforting logic is a truth far more intimate and unsettling than we are taught to imagine. The very act of observing something changes it, alters its physical behavior, and rewrites its nature in real time. This phenomenon, often called the observer effect, is not a metaphor for social awkwardness or a quirk of human psychology. It is a hard, measurable phenomenon, built into the very foundation of quantum mechanics itself. At this fundamental level, particles, the scaffolding of all matter, shift their behavior based not on what they are, but on the simple fact of whether or not they are being watched. The implications of this are profoundly dizzying, suggesting that reality is not a passive, independent backdrop for our lives. Instead, it is something fluid, participatory, and astonishingly responsive, bending beneath the subtle gravity of attention itself. This forces us to ask a disorienting question. If looking changes the world, what does it truly mean to know something? The famous double-slit experiment serves as the primary and most haunting evidence of this crack in objectivity. When particles are sent toward two slits without any observation, they behave like ethereal waves, spreading out and passing through both slits at once, creating a distinct ripple pattern on the detection screen. Yet, the instant we install detectors to observe which slit they pass through, this wave-like behavior completely vanishes. The particles revert to behaving like solid objects, choosing one path or the other, but never both. The interference pattern disappears. This is not an isolated or rare event. It is consistent, unavoidable, and deeply haunting. It tells us that the universe, as if shy, changes its behavior simply because it realizes it is being watched. At the most fundamental level, matter is not defined by some internal, mechanical certainty. It is defined by the relationship between itself and the awareness directed at it. This means the boundary we've drawn between the object and the observer isn't just blurry. It may not exist at all. The observer effect dismantles the illusion of a detached objective gaze, introducing us to a world where observation is a form of profound influence. To look is to touch. To perceive is to interfere. This inescapable conclusion stretches far beyond the walls of a physics lab, forcing a radical reevaluation of our own experience. You have never, in your entire life, looked at anything without changing it. This principle applies not just to electrons, but to people, to situations, and most critically, to yourself. Have you ever noticed how a person's behavior shifts when they realize they are being observed? They might become more performative or more restrained, more careful or more exaggerated, simply because your attention is present. Have you ever watched your own reflection and felt your posture instinctively change, your expression adjusting to meet the expectation of what you intended to see? This is the observer effect in macro. It reveals that observation is never passive. It is generative, formative, and, in a clinical sense, manipulative. Once you truly grasp this, you must question everything. Did that difficult conversation unfold that way because of the words spoken, or because of the way it was perceived and observed by both parties? Are you the person you are because of some static, internal self, or are you a fluid reflection, constantly bending to the contours of external focus? The quantum world challenges our very metaphysics. It suggests your identity is never separate from who is watching. And perhaps, in a strange recursive loop, the most powerful and relentless observer of all is yourself. Your own attention, your self-talk, your internal gaze may be the primary force shaping your behavior, your choices, and your fate. This might be the true mechanism behind the power of mindfulness. It isn't just about finding peace. It's about engaging with the mechanics of creation. To observe your own thought patterns without judgment is to fundamentally shift those patterns, altering the outcome by the simple act of bearing witness. Presence changes things. Attention is not just focus, it is alchemy. The world does not unfold in front of you like a fixed reel of film. It unfolds with you, around you, and often because of you. This dissolves the artificial line between science and spirituality, inviting you to see that looking is not just a function of the eyes. It is a force, a constant dialogue between being and becoming. In that dialogue, you are not just watching your life. You are helping it take shape. Think about the last time someone really saw you, not superficially, but with their full, undivided presence. Didn't you feel something shift? Didn't you feel yourself becoming sharper, more defined, more real? That was the observer effect, playing out not in a lab, but in the messy, vital experiment of human connection. In that space, we are all simultaneously particles and observers, collapsing into form beneath the weight of mutual attention. What if every act of looking leaves an indelible fingerprint? What if the future isn't just waiting to happen, but is waiting to be noticed in a particular way, and your gaze is the tool that brings it into focus? Science, in this light, ceases to be a tool for control and becomes a profound lesson in humility. It reveals a universe built on reciprocity. The more we look, the more we change what we see, and the more we change what we see, the more we are changed in return. This is a terrifying and beautiful realization. It means nothing is frozen. Nothing is final. Everything, including you, is still in motion, still collapsing into form, still being observed into reality, moment by moment, gaze by gaze. 3. The entangled past. How the future alters what was. We have been conditioned to believe that time flows like a great river, moving only forward, steady and unbroken. This narrative, essential for our sanity, insists that the past is fixed in stone, the present is a fleeting moment, and the future is an unwritten page. This comforting linearity, however, may be nothing more than a biological illusion, a story our brains tell us to create narrative order from chaos. What if time doesn't flow at all? What if, instead, it stretches like a vast, coexisting landscape, where past, present, and future all exist simultaneously? More disturbing still, what if the future could actively reach backward and fundamentally change the past? This is not a premise for science fiction. It is the disruptive implication of cutting-edge quantum physics. Experiments known as delayed choice quantum erasers reveal a reality where this is not just possible, but repeatable and mathematically sound. These experiments demonstrate that decisions made in the present can appear to ripple backward, altering the outcomes of events that have, by all classical measures, already occurred. Particles seem to retroactively decide how they behaved in the past, based on how we choose to observe them in the present. It's as if the future is not a passive destination, but an active participant, reshaping the very path that leads to it. This concept, known as retrocausality, doesn't just challenge our intuition, it completely decimates it. If the future can influence the past, then the rigid pillars of cause and effect collapse into malleable shadows. Time ceases to be a simple direction and becomes a complex, entangled relationship. Once you grasp this, even partially, your perception of reality fractures. Your memories, your regrets, the scars you thought were permanent, none of them look the same again. A terrifying door is cracked open. Maybe nothing is ever truly over. Maybe the past is still soft, still alive, and still being shaped by the pressure of what is yet to come. To understand this, we must look at the subatomic level, where before and after lose their meaning. In a delayed choice experiment, a particle is split into two entangled twins. One is measured almost immediately, recording its state. The other is sent on a much longer path. An experimenter can then choose, after the first particle has already been detected, whether to measure the second particle in a way that reveals its path or in a way that erases that information. Shockingly, the behavior of the first particle appears to change based on the later choice made for the second particle. If the future choice erases the path information, the first particle acts as if it never had a single path, like a wave. If the future choice measures the path, the first particle acts as if it always had one, like a particle. It's as if the early particle knew what was going to be chosen for its twin in the future. The past seems to be retroactively rewritten by the present. This isn't a metaphor. It's a consistent, precise experimental result. We are forced to question the very direction of time and abandon the superstition that the past is dead and buried. If the future can reach into the past, we are no longer just the consequences of our history. We become its active editors, its collaborators, its ghosts. This has profound implications for the human experience. If the past isn't fixed, perhaps our relationship to it can also be fundamentally altered. Perhaps healing can ripple backward. The trauma you endured may not be permanently etched into your narrative. Its emotional weight could be reinterpreted, softened, even altered by the choices you make today. Perhaps an act of forgiveness in the present doesn't just lighten your future. It may gently rewrite the code of your past. Choices made from a place of love, rather than bitterness, might send quiet tremors backward, dislodging the pain you thought you'd carry forever. We long for certainty and linear stories, but the world is not neat, and neither are we. We are quantum creatures, existing across timelines we cannot perceive. This may explain why some old memories suddenly feel different, why a childhood scene can shift in its emotional tone after years of silence, or why an old regret can lose its sting after a new, unrelated choice is made. This emotional echo might be the soul's version of retrocausality, a backward trembling reality confirming that this is still shifting. You are still changing what came before. Perhaps our obsession with revisiting the past isn't just nostalgia. It's an intuitive recognition that time is a living web, and every tug we make now vibrates in all directions. This is about you. Your future self might already be speaking to you now, nudging you, calling back across time, asking you to choose better, not because you failed, but because it can still make a difference to the past that created it. Maybe déjà vu isn't a glitch but a shimmer, the feeling of a future folding into the now, bending the arrow of time until the past rearranges itself under the weight of your becoming. The most haunting and liberating part is this: if the future can change the past, then you are not trapped by what happened. You are invited to participate in what it becomes. 4. The solid illusion. Why you are 99.9% emptiness. We move through the world convinced of our own substance. You feel the weight of your body in the chair, the resistance of the ground beneath your feet, and the warmth of your own skin. You look in the mirror and see a continuous solid form, a vessel that contains your life, your history, and your consciousness. This perception of solidity is the foundational lie upon which your entire reality is built. It is a comforting hallucination, a trick of the senses designed to let you navigate a physical world that, in truth, barely exists in the way you imagine. If we were to strip away the illusion and look at what you are truly made of, peering past the flesh, the cells, and the molecules, down to the atomic bedrock of your existence, we would find a terrifying and beautiful void. The scientific reality, confirmed by generations of physicists probing the fundamental architecture of matter, is that you are almost entirely empty space. To understand the scale of this emptiness, we must abandon our human-sized intuitions. We are taught that atoms are building blocks, like microscopic bricks stacked together to form a wall. But an atom is not a brick. It is a vast, lonely cathedral of silence. The nucleus, the dense core where almost all the mass resides, is infinitesimally small compared to the total volume of the atom. The electrons that orbit this nucleus do so at distances that are, proportionally speaking, vast. If the nucleus were the size of a marble sitting in the center of a football stadium, the electrons would be like gnats buzzing in the highest bleachers, and everything in between, that entire cavernous expanse, would be absolutely nothing. This means that more than 99.99% of your body, the laptop you are typing on, the house you live in, and the planet you stand upon, is composed of a silent, howling void. This revelation is not merely a piece of trivia. It is an existential demolition. It forces us to confront the fact that matter as we perceive it is an emergent property of emptiness. If you are mostly empty space, then the solidity you feel is a mirage. When you press your hand against a table, you are not feeling physical matter colliding with physical matter. You are feeling a force field. You are experiencing the electromagnetic repulsion between the electron clouds of your hand and the electron clouds of the table. Like two magnets with the same polarity pushing against each other, the sensation of touch is actually the sensation of resistance. You are feeling the refusal of fields to merge, a phantom interaction between charged energies that never truly make contact. You hover forever suspended, nanometers away from everything you think you are touching. The implications of this ripple outward, destabilizing our sense of identity. We cling to the idea of the self as something concrete, a biological statue carved from stone. But physics tells us that the body is more like a probability cloud than a structure. We are more absence than presence, more gap than grain. This challenges the very seat of our consciousness. If we are mostly void, where does the I reside? Where is the substance of experience housed? Where do love, memory, and trauma live, if not in the dense machinery of molecules? We are forced to consider that perhaps we are not the particles themselves, but the pattern they maintain within the emptiness. We are the ghost in the machine, but the machine itself is mostly ghost. However, this descent into emptiness need not be a journey into nihilism. There is a radical liberation hidden inside this scientific truth. If solidity is an illusion, then rigidity is a choice. The psychological structures we build, our egos, our defenses, our rigid beliefs about who we are often based on the myth that we are solid, immutable objects. We act as if we are carved in stone, unchangeable and defended. But if you are 99.9% space, then you are not a fortress. You are a network. You are porous. You are open. The emptiness is not a deficiency. It is a capacity. It is the very thing that allows for movement, for change, and for connection. Consider the nature of music. A melody is not formed by a continuous solid wall of sound. It is structured by the intervals, the silences, and the gaps between the notes. Without the empty space, there is no rhythm, no structure, and no song. The same is true for you. Your existence is defined not just by the particles you collect, but by the space you hold. This emptiness is the canvas upon which the form of your life emerges. It is the silence that gives the sound of your existence its shape. When you begin to see yourself not as a solid object, but as a dynamic, vibrating field suspended in emptiness, your relationship with the world shifts. You stop trying to be a rock and start allowing yourself to be a ripple. This perspective also transforms our understanding of human connection. We often feel a profound loneliness, a sense of separation from others. But if we are all mostly empty space, then the boundaries between us are far less absolute than they appear. While our atoms may repel one another, our fields overlap, our waves interfere and resonate. In those moments of deep connection, when you feel you are on the same wavelength as another, you are experiencing a resonance that the emptiness cannot erase. In fact, it is the emptiness that makes the resonance possible. It allows the signal to travel. It allows the energy to pass. We spend so much of our lives fearing our own hollowness. We try to fill the void with status, with possessions, with noise, and with the desperate accumulation of stuff, hoping to prove that we are real, that we are heavy, that we matter. But the physics of your own body argues against this striving. You were never meant to be solid. You were never meant to be a closed container. You are a constellation of energy, a shimmering storm of probability, flickering across an ancient and infinite void. The emptiness inside you is not a sign of brokenness. It is the architecture of potential. It is the room you have been given to grow, to change, and to become. To accept your emptiness is to accept your freedom. You are not a thing. You are an event, happening in the glorious open space of the universe. 5. The elasticity of now. How speed rewrites time. We were raised on the comforting idea that time is a constant, an impartial metronome ticking evenly for every life, every star. We assumed that a second on our watch was a second everywhere. This fundamental assumption, however, was wrong. Time, as Einstein revealed, is not a rigid ruler, but an elastic, malleable fabric. It is subjective, stretching and shrinking under the influence of gravity and, most startlingly, speed. The faster you travel through the 3 dimensions of space, the more slowly you travel through the 4th dimension of time. This is not a philosophical metaphor or a trick of perception. It is a physical reality woven into the structure of space-time, a cosmic law confirmed by countless experiments. This truth dismantles our intuitive sense of a shared universal now. If 2 observers move at different velocities, they will fundamentally disagree on the order of events, on the duration of a moment, and on whether 2 things happen simultaneously. This is the disorienting core of relativity. The time we envisioned as a great, unifying river becomes a fractured, personalized stream, its current bent and curved by simple motion. This effect isn't just theoretical. It's a practical, measurable reality that modern technology must account for. GPS satellites, moving at high speeds far above the Earth, experience time passing at a different rate than we do on the surface. If their clocks weren't constantly adjusted to account for this relativistic discrepancy, your phone's navigation would become uselessly inaccurate, placing you miles away from your actual location within a single day. Our minds, having evolved in a low-speed, high-gravity environment, were simply not built to grasp this truth. We built entire civilizations around the useful, intuitive lie that time is absolute. Once you truly internalize the facts, everything changes. If time itself is dependent on motion, then so are aging, memory, and causality. The concept of wasting time becomes fragile and terrifyingly literal. This realization gives birth to a startling, scientifically sound possibility: one-way time travel. If you boarded a ship and traveled near the speed of light for what felt like a few years, You could return to Earth to find that centuries had passed. Everyone you knew would be gone, your entire world relegated to history. You would be a living anachronism, a ghost arriving too late. This is the reality of time dilation. Time is not a line but a landscape, not a march but a maze. We see haunting echoes of this physics in our own subjective lives. Consider how childhood summers felt infinite, while adult years seem to vanish in a blink. Think of how grief can stretch a single second into an agonizing eternity, while joy collapses an hour into a fleeting moment. Perhaps relativity is written not only into space-time, but into our hearts. Your timeline is unique, not just metaphorically, but physically and fundamentally. This brings a sense of awe, but also a profound sorrow. It means we are all moving through time at slightly different personal speeds. Even when we walk side by side, our clocks are never perfectly in sync. This may be why true intimacy feels so miraculous and rare. To be truly seen and understood by another person is, in effect, to momentarily collapse two unique timelines into coherence. It's the feeling, if only for a heartbeat, that you're now in someone else's, now have become the same. In a universe of relative time, shared experience is not a given. It is precious, conjured, and earned. It is the only thing that cuts through the profound loneliness of being trapped in your own clock. This reframes our deepest values. What if meaning is found not in duration, but in the depth of that shared dilation? What if love is less about the length of time, and more about the way two people can stretch a single second into an eternity, just by choosing to be present with one another? Relativity is not just science, it is metaphor made real. Emotion carved directly into space-time. The next time you feel time flying or dragging, remember, it is not a river you are stuck in. It is a web you are shaping. 6. The paradox of acceleration. Why fire leads to ice. We live our lives governed by a comforting, yet deceptive, faith in linearity. We are taught from a young age that the physical world behaves in a predictable, orderly sequence. Logic dictates that if you want to get from point A to point B, the shortest distance is a straight line. In the realm of thermodynamics, this logic seems unassailable. If you want to cool something down, you remove heat. It follows, then, that an object starting at a lower temperature should reach a freezing point faster than an object starting at a boiling point. This is the common sense of physics, a rational assumption that suggests nature plays fair, that it respects head starts, and that the journey towards stillness is a gradual, measured descent. But hidden deep within the laws of heat and energy lies a phenomenon that shatters this assumption, a paradox so baffling and counterintuitive that it forces us to question the very nature of progress and transformation. This phenomenon is known as the Mpemba effect, named after a Tanzanian student who noticed something impossible not in a high-tech laboratory, but in a simple classroom cookery class. He observed that hot ice cream mix froze significantly faster than cold mix. When he presented this observation, he was ridiculed by his teachers and peers because it violated the standard laws of cooling. How could a substance that has further to go, thermodynamically speaking, arrive at the destination sooner? It defies the logic of race. The hot water must first cool down to the temperature of the cold water, and then continue to freeze, so it should surely take longer. Yet, time and time again, under specific conditions, nature proves the student right and the textbooks wrong. Hot water can freeze faster than cold water. Scientists have spent decades arguing over the mechanics of this anomaly. They propose theories involving evaporation, where the hot water loses mass and thus has less to freeze. They speak of convection currents, dissolved gases, and supercooling. But no single explanation has ever fully satisfied the scientific community or silenced the questions. The mystery remains. suggesting that our understanding of how systems change state is fundamentally incomplete. This is not merely a thermodynamic curiosity. It is a profound metaphorical mirror for the human condition, revealing that the path to stability is rarely a straight line. The Mpemba effect is more than a curiosity. It is a spiritual blueprint that challenges our obsession with moderation. In our lives, we often fear intensity. We avoid conflict, rage, and mitigate our passion, suppressing believing that the safest way to reach a state of peace or coolness is through a slow, controlled de-escalation. We try to cool off gradually. But the physics of the Mpemba effect suggests that this temperate approach might actually be a trap. It implies that intensity can be a shortcut to stagnation. By maintaining a lukewarm state, we may be prolonging our suffering, keeping ourselves trapped in a state of liquid indecision far longer than necessary. Consider the dynamics of human transformation. We often see that the person who crashes into stillness, the one who burns too bright, who hits rock bottom with violent intensity, or who allows themselves to be consumed by the chaos of a crisis, often arrives at a place of profound clarity much faster than the person cautious wholly manages their decline. The friend who allows their heart to break completely, who screams and rages and burns with the heat of their loss, often finds their way to the solid ground of acceptance rather than the one who suppresses their grief, trying to maintain a facade of coolness. The heat does not delay the freezing. It accelerates it. This is because extreme energy forces a system to reorganize. When a system is pushed to its boiling point, the existing structures, whether they are molecular bonds or psychological defenses, are loosened and improved. The chaos of the heat breaks down the rigidity of the status quo, creating a fluid state where radical reconfiguration becomes possible. In contrast, a cold or tepid system retains its structure. It is sluggish, resistant to change, and prone to lingering in a state of uncomfortable stasis. The fastest way to freeze, to crystallize into a new and stable form, is to first burn. This realization reframes how we view crises and rock-bottom moments. We typically view burnout, breakdowns, or intense conflicts as failures, as deviations from the correct path of gradual progress. But the paradox of acceleration suggests that these moments of high heat are actually catalysts. They are the accelerants that flip the system before it has time to resist. An intense argument can surface truths that years of politeness, cold silence never could. A complete breakdown can clear the mind more thoroughly than months of measured, gentle reflection. The violence of the process is not a bug. It is the feature that allows for shortcuts. Suddenly, the laws we trust to guide our lives look less like rules of order and more like descriptions of thresholds and tipping points. We begin to understand that extremity is not always the enemy of balance. Sometimes, to find equilibrium, you must first swing to the furthest edge of the pendulum. The universe does not always reward the cautious or the slow. It respects the energy of the burn. The lesson of the Mpemba effect is a lesson in humility. A reminder that knowledge does not always look like prediction, and that wisdom is not always linear. So when you find yourself in the fire, when the heat of your life seems unbearable, and the chaos feels overwhelming, do not assume you are failing. Do not assume you are further from peace than the person who is standing still in the cold. You might just be in the grip of a higher law of physics, one that is using your intensity to propel you toward a new form of stillness. You are not burning up. You are hurriedly moving towards a new state of being. The path to the ice leads through the fire, and you are moving faster than you think. 7. The sacred gap. Why true contact is an illusion. We are taught from birth that touch is the most intimate and verifiable of our sensations. When skin meets skin, or fingers lace together, the experience feels immediate, undeniable, and sacred. It seems to be the one truth our bodies can tell. Yet physics whispers a shocking truth that fundamentally undermines this core experience. You have never, in your entire life, actually touched another thing. Not in the way you think. At the atomic level, contact is a sophisticated illusion. What your brain interprets as pressure, as texture, as the solid warmth of another, is not the fusion of two surfaces. It is, in fact, the violent repulsion of their respective atoms. The electromagnetic force pushing electrons away from each other before they ever truly meet. This is not speculation. It is the confirmed science of quantum fields. The electrons orbiting the atoms in your hand are negatively charged, as are the electrons in the object you touch. As they approach, a powerful force of repulsion flares between them, a standoff that prevents their boundaries from ever overlapping. No matter how hard you press, an infinitesimal gap always remains. This realization lands not just in the brain, but in the chest. It reframes our most human acts, a kiss, an embrace, not as a merger, but as a mutual refusal at the smallest scale. We are not uniting. We are hovering at a perfect enforced distance. This physical principle becomes a devastatingly accurate metaphor for our emotional lives. Haven't you always known in some quiet internal place that you are fundamentally apart? Haven't you felt that even the person you love most remains, in some essential way, a mystery to you? No matter how close you get, there is always a final sliver of distance, a veil of consciousness that remains uncrossed. You can never fully know their mind. Perhaps this isn't a failure of intimacy, but its deepest truth. The tragedy of touch is also its profound beauty. We are built to reach, to ache for connection, and yet we are simultaneously constructed in a way that ensures we never fully arrive. This is precisely why touch matters so much. Its meaning is not derived from succeeding in closing the gap, but in the heroic, persistent attempt to do so anyway. Physics becomes poetry. What the atoms refuse, the heart still attempts. When you hold someone's hand, what you are feeling is not contact. It is proximity at the very edge of impossibility. It is two atomic systems agreeing, momentarily, to orbit one another as closely as the laws of the universe will permit. Intimacy is born not in fusion, but in that shared friction. Not in overlap, but in the artful choreography of approach without collision. This changes everything about how we see connection. It is not erasure. It is not absorption. It is not becoming one. It is the delicate dance of two complete, sovereign beings choosing to exist near one another, fully, without losing their own boundaries. Perhaps this is the hardest thing of all. To love without merging, to hold without possessing, to touch without dissolving. We so often confuse proximity with permission, presence with ownership. But the very nature of our existence demands boundaries, both electromagnetic and emotional. Respecting them is not cold. It is the only way love can be real. Only when you recognize that you can never fully enter someone else can you finally begin to appreciate them for who they truly are, not as an extension of yourself. This atomic truth echoes deeper still. If you've never really touched anything, then perhaps the world isn't something you're inside of, but something you are always beside. Perception itself may be a form of this untouching, a way of hovering just above reality, never fully landing. This explains why life can feel distant, why you can be in a crowd and feel profoundly alone, why you can be held and still feel untouched. The real distance isn't just physical. It is structural, fundamental, and inevitable. The miracle, then, is not that we are separate, but that we try so desperately not to be. We spend our entire lives inventing ways to close the gap, with language, with music, with stories, with hands outstretched in the dark, hoping something, anything, will reach back. We long not just to touch, but to respond, not to merge, but to reflect. Maybe that is what touch truly is. Not contact, but a consent to coexist as closely as nature allows. Loneliness is not a failure. It is the evidence of this deep human longing. Connection was never about eliminating the gap. It was always about meeting at its edge, feeling the electric hum between two fields that will never truly meet, and choosing, again and again, to call that impossible sensation love. 8. The expansive self, finding center in a centerless world. We are born geographers of a bounded world. From the moment we develop cognitive awareness, we are obsessed with finding the middle. We build our cities around downtowns, our religions around sacred sites, and our families around patriarchs or matriarchs. We instinctively organize reality into hierarchies of distance, assuming that there is a core where the meaning is potent and concentrated, and a periphery where it fades into insignificance. We project this architecture onto the cosmos itself. We imagine the Big Bang as a celestial firework, a singular explosion erupting from a specific coordinate in the void, sending shrapnel flying outward into an empty room. We assume that if we could just trace the trajectory of the stars backward, we would find the X that marks the spot, the throne of creation, the absolute center of the universe. But this map, so comforting to our hierarchical brains, is a complete fabrication. The universe refuses to play by the rules of human architecture. The staggering truth, confirmed by the shifting light of distant galaxies and the background radiation of the cosmos, is that the universe has no center. It is not expanding from one point. It is expanding from everywhere all at once. There is no ground zero. There is no privileged location. There is no edge where the universe stops and something else begins. To try to locate the center of the universe is like trying to find the center of the surface of a sphere. It is a question that misunderstands the geometry of the reality we inhabit. This concept is profoundly disorienting because it involves an expansion that does not displace space, but creates it. Imagine an uninflated balloon covered in dots. As you pump air into it, every dot moves away from every other dot. If you were living on one of those dots, you would look out and see every neighbor receding from you, and you would conceal, logically but incorrectly, that you were the center of the explosion. But every other dot sees the exact same thing. This is the cosmic reality. Space itself is stretching between the galaxies like breath between spoken words. At first glance, this lack of a center feels like a sentiment. It induces a kind of existential vertigo, a terrifying freefall in a dark room with no floor and no ceiling. If there is no center, there is no anchor. We feel unmoored, drifting in a vast indifference where no place is special, and therefore no place matters. We crave a cosmic pole to orient our moral compass, and science hands us a map with no north. But if you stay with this vertigo long enough, the fear flips into a realization of startling, empowering beauty. If the universe has no specific center, then everywhere is the center. If space is expanding equally in all directions from every single point, then every point is equally privileged, equally holy, and equally vital. This includes the very chair you are sitting in right now. By simply existing, by simply occupying a coordinate in space-time, you are the focal point of a cosmic expansion. You are as central to the unfolding of the universe as the most massive black hole or the brightest quasar a billion light-years away. The universe did not begin far away and long ago. The conditions of the beginning are stitched into the fabric of the here and now. This destroys the external search for meaning. We spend our lives acting like satellites, trying to find a planet to orbit. We look for a partner, a career, a leader, or a god to be the center of our lives, believing that if we can just get close enough to their gravity, we will feel grounded. We want to be close to the action, close to the source. But the physics of expansion tells us that we were never meant to find the center. We were meant to be it. You are not a moon. You are a sun. You are not meant to orbit meaning. You are meant to generate it. The center is not a geographic location you travel to. It is a condition of awareness you inhabit. Furthermore, this cosmological truth challenges our relationship with change. We tend to view stability as the goal and change as a threat. We want to arrive. We want to cross the finish line and rest. But a universe that is expanding everywhere suggests that stasis is unnatural. Stasis is death. The cosmos is defined by its refusal to stay the same, by its relentless drive to become wider, cooler, and more complex. If the universe is expanding, then you, as a child of that universe, must also expand. The pain you feel when you are forced to grow, the discomfort of having your boundaries stretched, is not a sign that things are going wrong. It is the sensation of alignment. It is the feeling of your own internal universe creating more space. When you feel lost, directionless, or unmoored, it is often because you are looking for a fixed point in a fluid reality. You are trying to stand still on a treadmill that is moving at the speed of light. The vertigo you feel is the friction between your desire for a center and the reality of expansion. To embrace the expansive self is to stop looking for the edge of the map. It is to realize that division is an illusion, that boundaries are temporary, and that everything is connected by the very fabric that is stretching us apart. We are not isolated fragments, exploding away from a home we can never return to. We are the home itself, growing larger. The universe is asking you to stop shrinking. It is asking you to occupy your space fully, to radiate your consciousness into the void, and to accept the terrifying responsibility of being the center of your own world. You do not need to be validated by a hierarchy that doesn't exist. You do not need to find your place in the grand scheme of things. You are the scheme. You are the expansion. And the center is wherever you are standing. 9. The river of self. Identity as pattern, not permanence. We are taught to believe in a continuous self, a core you that stretches from birth to this moment, knowable and unbroken. This is the default setting of human consciousness, but this fundamental belief is a comforting, profound illusion. The body you call yours, the one you dress and feed, the one that holds your deepest memories and pains, is not the same physical entity it was a decade ago. It is not even the same one it was 5 years ago. Beneath the stable illusion of permanence, you are being constantly and radically rebuilt, atom by atom, in a process so complete that almost none of your current atoms were part of you back then. This is the strange, unsettling biological truth confirmed by science. Over a span of roughly 7 to 10 years, your body replaces itself almost entirely. The particles you identify as you are merely borrowed components, exhaled by trees, forged in the hearts of distant, long-dead stars, passed through rivers and soil, and even released by strangers. The material continuity of your being is a convenient story. Your brain tells itself to maintain coherence, a necessary fiction to keep you from unraveling in the face of constant transformation. And yet, you feel like the same person, don't you? You carry memories, preferences, and wounds that persist even as your very flesh is replaced. This discrepancy is the gateway to one of existence's most profound paradoxes. You are simultaneously entirely different and entirely the same. This forces a new, more sophisticated definition of the self. If me is not the matter, then what is it? Perhaps identity is not a possession but a process. It's not a stone but a wave. Identity isn't what we're made of, but how we are arranged. It's the rhythm and pattern that endures, not the physical stuff. It is the continuity of the change itself. It's the way your voice remains yours even as your vocal cords age, or the way your eyes look into the mirror at a face made of entirely new particles, and still, instinctively, recognize, yes, that is still me. This act of recognition, this insistence on sameness in the face of absolute renewal, is a beautiful neurologic function. It means we are defined by our pattern, not our permanence, by what returns, not by what stays. This realization reframes everything about personal growth, healing, and our relationship with the past. It means that no version of you is final. You are perpetually in the process of becoming someone new, at a literal, biological level. The parts of you that you've tried to bury, the shame, the fear, the rage, are being physically shed with your skin and flushed out with your cells. This isn't just a metaphor. It's a material reality. Perhaps the person who hurt you no longer physically exists, and perhaps, in a very real sense, neither does the person who was hurt. If you are a river of becoming, disguised as a static person, then forgiveness isn't just a psychological act. It's a biological acknowledgement. Change is not just possible, it is the single most inevitable and built-in fact of your existence. This is both terrifying and liberating. It's terrifying because it means nothing about you is safe from time. Not your face, not your voice, not your most cherished passions. But it is profoundly liberating because it means you are not trapped in any single version of yourself. You are not frozen in your mistakes or failures. You are not bound to be the person you were last year, last week, or even yesterday. Your body itself becomes your silent accomplice in this transformation, an architect of reinvention, rebuilding you in preparation for your future. When you truly grasp this, it changes how you see everyone. The people you love, the people you fear, the people you thought you knew, they are all in constant, silent renewal. They are all in their own private revolution. This is why relationships are so hard, so fragile, and so worth fighting for. They require us to fall in love not once, but over and over again. They demand that we find the thread of identity inside the constant renovation, to accept that the person before us is both familiar and reborn. Deep love, then, is not the preservation of sameness. It is the willingness to adapt, to rediscover, and to meet someone where they are now, not where they were, and not where you wish they'd stayed. Perhaps this applies most of all to yourself. It is the courage to meet yourself where you are, even when you've left parts of yourself behind, even when you can't go back, and even when you're not sure who you're becoming next. This is the gift. Identity is not a prison, but a pilgrimage. It is not a singular truth, but a living library, not a solid sculpture, but a flickering signal of pattern moving through time. 10. The power of the 42nd fold. Why small habits create massive change. We are told that paper is thin, ordinary, and fragile. A single sheet is a whisper of material, easily torn or burned. But this mundane object hides a secret of such staggering, counterintuitive power that it borders on magic. This secret is not in the material itself, but in a simple mathematical function: exponential growth. If you could take a standard piece of paper and fold it in half, then fold it again, and repeat this action just 42 times, its thickness would compound to a height that would physically span the distance from the Earth to the moon. This isn't a metaphor or a riddle. It is the raw, unassailable power of doubling. This is the kind of growth our brains were never wired to understand. Human intuition evolved to grasp linear addition, one step after another, a slow, predictable accumulation. But exponential functions are alien, unnatural, and deeply unnerving to our cognitive framework. We see this disconnect everywhere. We underestimate how quickly a virus can spread, how compound interest builds wealth, or how technology accelerates. This gap between our linear expectations and the exponential reality of the universe provides a profound lesson in patience, perception, and the invisible power of simple persistence. When you begin folding, the first few steps seem meaningless. 2 layers, then 4, then 8. The paper is still thin enough to be dismissed, but the power is accumulating invisibly. By the 10th fold, it's about the width of a hand. By the 20th, it's a stack taller than a house. By the 30th, it has surpassed the height of Mount Everest. And by the 42nd fold, what began as a quiet act of compression has become a bridge to another world. This isn't magic, it is pure mathematics. It is the inevitable result of taking one small, repeatable pattern and executing it without stopping, without getting distracted by the apparent lack of progress. More than any other concept, this becomes a perfect metaphor for transformation in human life. It explains how true change actually unfolds. It is not, as we are often led to believe, a series of dramatic, overnight leaps. It is a process of consistent, quiet doubling of small actions that seem utterly meaningless until, suddenly, they are everything. You can feel this truth in your own life. The new habit you start today, the single-page read, the short walk, the one difficult email sent, feels like nothing on day 1. It is invisible on day 2 and barely noticeable on day 10. But if you stay with it, if you complete the fold every day, by day 42 or day 100, something extraordinary and irreversible has happened. A change lunar in scale has taken place, something you would have deemed impossible from the starting point. This teaches us that growth is not always visible while it is happening. Change is not always loud. The most critical effort is often not recognized in its early stages. This is precisely why most people quit. They abandon the process at fold 5, or fold 10, or fold 15, because the result doesn't feel like it's working. They are frustrated by the lack of linear reward, and so they never get to see the exponential curve bend sharply upward. They never get to touch the sky with something they began with a single paper-thin motion. The paradox, then, is that the biggest, most miraculous-looking outcomes in life often begin with acts so small they seem pointless. The chasm between nothing and everything is not a single leap, but a compounding loop. It is the process quietly doubling beneath the surface of your doubt, building pressure until it breaks through in a way that looks like a miracle but was, in fact, an inevitability. This reframes every goal you've ever set. It suggests that impossibility is often just impatience in disguise, and limits are often just a lack of repetition. What the paper teaches us is not just to believe, but to endure. It demands the courage to keep folding, even when it feels absurd, even when your hands are tired, and especially when nothing on the outside seems to be changing. Because the change is happening invisibly, exponentially, and one day, it will compound into something that reaches beyond your wildest imagination. Perhaps what truly scares us is not that we will fail, but that we might actually succeed if we just keep going. The power we fear is not external. It is dormant within ourselves, waiting to be compounded into something cosmic. You see this pattern in love, in the way one conversation doubles into trust, which doubles into intimacy. You see it in healing, as forgiveness unfolds layer by layer until a wound becomes wisdom. This forces you to rethink everything you abandoned at fold 5, every project you dismissed, because the distance to the goal felt too vast, too lunar, too impossible. What if that thing you thought would never work was just a few doublings away from liftoff? This realization makes you responsible, not for achieving the final result, but for simply staying in the process. Your only job is to hold the fold, to trust the curve. That is terrifying, because it implies the life you want isn't magically out of reach. It might be a habit you've already begun, but haven't repeated enough times to see it break the atmosphere. In this framework, effort becomes sacred. Consistency becomes holy. Time is no longer your enemy, but your greatest ally, your amplifier, your exponential machine. So the next time you are tempted to quit because the progress feels too slow or the reward too small, remember the 42nd fold. It's not about what you see now. It's about what you are invisibly building. Hold on just a little longer, and you may find that what you thought was ordinary was reaching for the moon all along. 11. The spooky link. Why distance is an illusion and connection is permanent. We are raised in a world defined by the brutal tyranny of geography. From our earliest moments, we are taught that distance is the ultimate definition of separation. We learn that space is a barrier, a void that keeps things apart, and that the farther you move from a source, the weaker its influence becomes. We equate proximity with closeness and absence with silence. If a person leaves the room, their voice fades. If they move across the country, the relationship requires technology to sustain. And if they die, we believe they are gone entirely, severed from us by the insurmountable distance of the grave. This is the logic of a classical mechanical universe, a world of lonely objects floating in empty space, interacting only when they crash into one another. It is a lonely, isolating worldview that tells you that you are a distinct entity, separated from everything else by a skin boundary and a few feet of air. But this entire architecture of separation is a lie. Deep in the subatomic basement of reality, the universe operates on a completely different set of rules, revealing a truth so strange and unsettling that it suggests distance itself may be nothing more than a sophisticated illusion. This phenomenon is known as quantum entanglement, and it is perhaps the most haunting discovery in the history of physics. It reveals that under certain conditions, two particles can become inextricably linked, sharing a single existence despite being physically separated. Once two particles have interacted and become entangled, they lose their individual independence. They become a single system. If you take one of these particles and keep it in a lab on Earth and send its twin to the other side of the galaxy, the link between them remains instantaneous and unbreakable. If you measure the state of the particle on Earth, say you observe that it is spinning up, the particle across the galaxy will instantly, faster than the speed of light, collapse into a state of spinning down. There is no signal traveling between them. There is no radio wave or beam of light carrying the message. The connection is immediate. It is as if the millions of light years of space between them simply do not exist. This concept was so radical, so offensive to the classical understanding of physics, that Albert Einstein refused to accept it. He famously derided it as spooky action at a distance, believing that nothing could influence another object faster than light. He argued that there must be a hidden variable, some secret instruction written inside the particles. Because the alternative, that space is an illusion and separation is a myth, was too chaotic to accept. But Einstein was wrong. Decades of rigorous experiments have confirmed again and again that entanglement is real. The universe is non-local, meaning that objects can be intimately connected without touching, without seeing, and without communicating in any way we understand. The separation we see with our eyes is a mirage. The connection is the fundamental reality. When we pull this concept out of the sterile environment of the laboratory and apply it to the messy emotional landscape of human existence, the implications become profound. If the fundamental building blocks of matter can remain entangled across galaxies, why should we assume that the complex patterns of energy that make up a human consciousness are any different? We have all felt the eerie sensation of spooky action in our own lives. Think of the times you have known, with sudden and inexplicable certainty, that someone you love was in danger, or the moment you thought of a friend you hadn't spoken to in years, only to have the phone ring later. We dismiss these as coincidences or quirks of psychology. But perhaps they are not. Perhaps they are evidence that we, too, are entangled systems. This framework fundamentally reshapes our understanding of grief and loss. When someone we love dies or leaves, the pain we feel is often described as a hole, a void, or a breaking. But viewed through the lens of entanglement, that pain is not the result of a connection being severed. It is the sensation of the connection persisting under extreme tension. It is quantum dissonance, the agony of an entangled system being stretched across the apparent void of death. The person is physically gone, removed from your classical proximity, but the quantum link remains. You are still spinning in relation to them. The ghost you feel, the sudden pang of recognition when you hear a song or smell a scent, is not a trick of memory. It is the vibration of an invisible thread that space and time have failed to cut. The absence is a physical illusion. The presence is a quantum fact. This applies to your own history as well. You are likely still entangled with every version of yourself that has ever existed. We tend to think of our past selves as dead and gone, shed like snakeskin. But if entanglement holds, you are still linked to the child you were, the teenager who was heartbroken, the young adult who was full of arrogance and fear. When you feel a sudden wave of unexplainable emotion, or a reaction that doesn't fit your current circumstances, you might be feeling the spin of a past self rippling through the timeline. You are not a single point in time. You are a smeared-out timeline of entangled states, constantly changing and being influenced by who you were and who you were become. Ultimately, this destroys the myth of the solitary individuals. We are taught to be independent, to be islands. But if particles can be entangled, then the universe is not a collection of separate objects. It is a vast, shimmering web of relations. Everything that has ever touched is, in some sense, still touching. The universe is a tapestry where every thread pulls on every other thread. This is terrifying because it means you are never truly alone, and you are never truly hidden. It means your private thoughts, your quietest heals, and your secret pains are sending tremors through the web, affecting people you may not even know. Responsibility takes on a new weight in an entangled cosmos. You are not just responsible for what you do to the people standing next to you. You are responsible for the signal you are broadcasting into the network. Every shift in your own consciousness, every act of forgiveness, every conquest of fear, adjusts your spin. And because you are entangled with the world, that adjustment ripples out instantly, touching the lives of others in ways you will never see. We are not isolated sparks dying in the dark. We are a single breathing fire, connected by a spooky, unbreakable link that mocks the very idea of goodbye. 12. Beyond the binary, the wave particle self. We are indoctrinated from the moment we acquire language to fracture the world into opposing camps. We are taught to categorize, to label, and to divide reality into neat, mutually exclusive boxes. We are told that things must be either this or that, never both. An object is either solid or fluid. A statement is either true or false. A person is either good or bad, strong or weak, logical or emotional. This binary logic is the operating system of the human ego, a mental survival mechanism that simplifies the terrifying complexity of existence into an efficient chessboard of black and white squares. We cling to these divisions because they offer safety. They provide a sense of order in a chaotic universe. But this entire framework of understanding, this rigid architecture of either-or, crumbles into dust when we confront the fundamental nature of light. Light, the most primal and essential element of our universe, refuses to obey our rules. It defies the tyranny of the binary. For centuries, scientists argued over its nature. Was it a stream of tiny bullets, discrete and punchy? Or was it a ripple in a pond, continuous and flowing? The answer, revealed by the baffling experiments of quantum mechanics, is that it is both. Light does not choose a side. It exists in a state of impossible duality, behaving as a continuous, spreading wave that can pass through two doors at once, and simultaneously as a discrete, localized particle that strikes a single point with precision. This is not a contradiction. It is a higher form of truth. It is reality declaring, I contain multitudes. This physical reality, that the building blocks of the universe can be two contradictory things at the same time, is not just a scientific curiosity. It is a mirror reflecting the deepest truth of your own identity. If the very light that illuminates your face can exist in a dual nature, why do you insist that you must be only one thing? Why do you torment yourself with the pressure to be consistent, to fit into a single box, to define yourself once and for all? The tension you feel inside, the war between the part of you that wants to be wild, and the part that craves safety, or the skeptic who doubts and the dreamer who hopes, is not a flaw. It is not a sign of confusion. It is the echo of your wave particle nature. The most profound lesson from the behavior of light lies in how it switches between these states. It depends entirely on how it is observed. When scientists set up an experiment to detect waves, light behaves like a wave, interfering with itself and spreading out into patterns of possibility. But the moment they change the apparatus to ask, "Where's the particle?" light obliges and collapses into a hard, defined point. The nature of the reality depends on the question asked by the observer. Apply this to your own life. How often have you felt your own infinite potential collapse into a small, hard particle simply because of how someone looked at you? When we are unobserved, in the privacy of our own minds, we are waves. We are fluid, expansive, and full of contradictory possibilities. We act out conversations that never happened. We inhabit futures that don't exist. We feel emotions that have no names. We are a superposition of everything we could be. But then we step into a room, or we walk into a job interview, or we sit across from a critical parent, and suddenly we collapse. We become the particle they expect to see. We become the responsible one, the funny one, or the failure. We shrink to fit the measurement. This is the tragedy and the power of the observer effect. We are constantly collapsing one another. We look at the people we love, and we demand that they be particles, predictable, solid, and understood. We get angry when they act out of character, forgetting that character is just a box we built for them. We deny them their wave nature because their fluidity frightens us. We want them to be static so we can feel safe. But in doing so, we reduce them. We strip them of their complexity and force them to play a role in our script. However, there is a liberation hidden in this physics. Once you understand that you are both wave and particle, you can stop apologizing for your contradictions. You can accept that you are meant to be fluid when the situation demands it, and solid when action is required. You can embrace the fact that you are a spectrum, not a point. You can be the wave that ripples with empathy and connection, blurring the lines between you and the world. And you can be the particle that stands your ground, sets a boundary, and makes a distinct impact. This also transforms how we understand love. True love is not forcing someone to remain a static particle that pleases you. True love is the capacity to witness someone's waveform without needing to collapse it. It is the ability to say, "I see you in all your potential, in all your contradictions, and I do not need you to be just one thing to be real to me." It is a reverse observation that calls a person into presence without trapping them in a definition. The universe is not a place of hard binaries. It is a place of shimmering ambiguity, of both and rather than either or. You were never meant to be a fixed object on a shelf. You were meant to be light, responsive, mutable, and alive. The next time you feel the pressure to define yourself, to find yourself, or to pick a side in the internal war of your identity, remember the photon. Remember that you are vast enough to be many things at once. You are the interference pattern of 1,000 possibilities, and the only thing that limits you is the narrowness of the lens through which you view yourself. 13. The retrocausal self. Reshaping what was. We exist within a cultural and biological construct that insists time is a tyrannical arrow, flying in only one direction. We are taught that the past is a sealed vault, a static library of events that have been written in permanent ink, while the future is a blank void waiting to be filled. This linear perspective forms the bedrock of our psychology. We carry the weight of our histories as if they are immutable burdens, believing that what is done cannot be undone, that the words spoken cannot be unheard, and that the tragedies we endured are fixed points in the architecture of our lives. But what if this understanding of time is merely a cognitive limitation, a simplified user interface designed for survival rather than truth? Buried deep within the equations of general relativity and the baffling results of quantum mechanics lies a whisper of a different reality. The past may not be dead, and the arrow of time may be reversible. The concept of moving backward through time has long been relegated to the realm of fantasy, a narrative device for fixing mistakes. Yet physics takes the idea of closed time-like curves quite seriously. These are loops in the fabric of space-time that would, theoretically, allow an object to return to its own past. While the engineering required to navigate such a path remains impossible, the quantum realm offers a more immediate and unsettling proof of concept. In experiments known as delayed choice quantum erasers, we witness a phenomenon that defies all rational logic. A decision made in the present appears to influence the behavior of a particle in the past. It is as if the history of the particle is not written until the future observes it. The now reaches back and dictates the then. If this retrocausality exists at the fundamental level of reality, it forces us to confront a staggering philosophical question. Is the past actually fixed, or is it fluid, waiting for the present to give it shape? This idea dismantles the rigidity of our personal histories. We are accustomed to viewing our identity as a cumulative result of our past experiences, a led to be, which led to see, which created me. But if the arrow can point backward, then our current state of being might be actively reshaping the events that created us. We are not just the products of our history. We are, in a very real sense, its ongoing editors. This speaks to the profound human ache of regret. Regret is, at its core, a desire to violate the laws of physics. It is the desperate wish to reach back through the closed door of yesterday and alter the sequence of events. We replay scenarios in our minds, obsessing over the fork in the road, torturing ourselves with the what-ifs. We treat these thoughts as futile fantasies, but perhaps they are an intuitive recognition of our retrocausal nature. We sense that the past is still alive, still vibrating, and still susceptible to influence. The tragedy is not that we cannot change the events, but that we do not realize we can change the structure of the memory itself. This is where time travel shifts from a technological impossibility to a psychological reality. While we cannot step into a machine and physically stop a car crash or unsay a cruel word, we engage in a form of mental time travel every time we remember. Neuroscience tells us that memory is not a playback of a video file. It is a reconstruction. Every time you recall a memory, you are physically rewriting the neural pathways associated with it. You are altering the past in the biological medium of your brain. If you revisit a trauma with a new perspective, with compassion, with wisdom, or with a refusal to be a victim, you are effectively changing the state of that past event. You are the observer in the present, collapsing the waveform of the past into a new reality. This leads to a deeper resolution of the famous grandfather paradox. The fear of time travel is that if we change the past, we might erase ourselves. If you go back and fix your worst mistake, do you lose the wisdom you gained from it? Do you cease to be the person who needed to travel back in the first place? This paradox reveals why we cling to our pain. We fear that without it, we would lose our identity. But the retrocausal self offers a different path. We do not go back to erase the event. We go back to rescue the self who endured it. Consider the work of deep therapy or profound introspection. When you revisit a childhood wound, you are not just thinking about it. You are projecting your adult consciousness back into the timeline of the child. You are offering that past self the presence and safety they lacked in the original moment. In doing so, you change the emotional weight of the history. The facts remain, but the frequency shifts. The past stops being a source of haunting and becomes a source of integration. You are closing the loop, not by erasing the line, but by turning it into a spiral. Ultimately, the retrocausal self teaches us that we are not trapped by what happened. We are trapped only by our belief that the past is finished. The universe allows for loops. It allows for the future to whisper to the past. Your life is not a straight line moving toward death. It is a conversation between who you were, who you are, and who you will become. The you of today has the power to reach back and heal the you of yesterday, proving that while we may not be able to turn back the clock, we can fundamentally alter the time that the clock measures. 14. The lagging self. Why now is an illusion. We move through existence, anchored by a singular, unshakable conviction that we are present. We believe that our eyes act as transparent windows to the world, transmitting reality instantaneously. We assume that when a moment unfolds, we are witnessing it live, that our thoughts are synchronized with the ticking clock of the universe, and that our decisions are made in the very heartbeat of the now. This belief is the foundation of our sense of agency. It tells us that we are the pilots of our own vessels, navigating the stream of time as it happens. But this sense of immediacy is a sophisticated neurological lie. The unsettling truth, confirmed by both physics and neuroscience, is that you have never, in your entire life, experienced the present moment. You are biologically condemned to live in the past. The mechanism of this deception is built into the hardware of your body. Reality does not enter your consciousness directly. It must first be translated. When light strikes your retina, or sound waves vibrate against your eardrum, the physical event is already over. These raw signals must then be encoded into electrochemical impulses and transmitted along nerve fibers, a process that, while fast, is not instantaneous. Once these signals reach the brain, the real work begins. Your neural networks must filter, process, interpret, and integrate this chaotic data into a coherent picture. This processing time creates a mandatory lag, a delay of roughly 200 to 500 milliseconds between the event occurring and your conscious awareness of it. Half a second might seem negligible, a mere blink of an eye. But in the realm of neural processing, half a second is an eternity. It is enough time for a fastball to travel from a pitcher's mound to home plate. It is enough time for a microexpression to flash across a face and disappear. It means that by the time you see the smile of a loved one, that smile has already faded in the real world. By the time you hear the thunder, the air has long since settled. You are perpetually trapping ghosts in the amber of your awareness, reacting to a world that has already moved on. You are walking through life with a permanent lag, chasing a reality that is always just out of reach. To prevent you from going mad from this disorientation, your brain performs a magic trick of staggering complexity. It does not simply relay the delayed feed, it edits it. It stitches the lagging sensory data together with memories and expectations to create a seamless, hallucinated now. Even more disturbingly, it predicts the future. To compensate for the lag, your brain anticipates what should happen next and projects that simulation into your conscious mind, treating it as fact. When you catch a ball, you are not reacting to where the ball is. You are reacting to a calculation of where it will be, derived from outdated information. You are living in a predictive simulation, a neurological buffer zone that masks the terrifying truth that you are always behind. This realization detonates the concept of free will. If your conscious experience is a delayed reconstruction, then who is actually driving the car? If you touch a hot stove, your hand pulls away before you feel the pain. Your body acts, and then, milliseconds later, your consciousness arrives on the scene to claim credit for the decision. This suggests that the I you identify with, the voice in your head, the thinker, the decider, is not the captain of the ship, but the historian. You are the narrator, sitting in the cabin, writing a story about where the ship went after it has already turned. This casts a haunting light on our identity. It implies that our conscious self is fundamentally reactive, a spectator who believes they are a player. We spend our lives agonizing over choices, replaying conversations, and judging our reactions, failing to realize that the reaction was initiated by a preconscious intelligence long before we had a say in it. The guilt we carry for not speaking up in a moment, or for missing a subtle cue, is the guilt of a historian, blaming themselves for the outcome of a battle they didn't fight. We are judging ourselves for being late to a moment we were never physically capable of catching. The implications extend into our relationships. If we are all living in this lag, then every interaction is a collision of delayed broadcasts. We are misinterpreting one another not just because of language or bias, but because of timing. We are reacting to the ghost of an expression, the echo of a tone. The dissonance we feel in social situations, the uncanny valley of disconnection, might be the friction of two time-delayed simulations grinding against each other. We are never truly present with another person. We are present with their afterimage. However, there is a path through this existential vertigo. If we accept that now is an illusion, we can stop fighting the delay. We can recognize that true intelligence, intuition, flow, instinct, lives in the pre-conscious gap, in the lightning-fast processing that occurs before the narrator wakes up. The feeling of flow in sports or art is the sensation of the conscious mind finally shutting up and letting the embodied self, which lives closer to real time, take the wheel. Ultimately, this lag is not a prison. It is a space. It is the buffer where meaning is made. If we were perfectly synced with reality, we would be purely reactive machines, automata of stimulus and response. The delay allows for the story. It allows for the interpretation, the feeling, and the integration of the event. We may be living in the past, but it is in that split second of history that we become human. We are not the lightning. We are the thunder, always following, always echoing, but undeniable in our resonance. To be human is to be late, and perhaps to be late is the only way to arrive at all. 15. The neural paintbrush. Why your reality is an internal creation. We navigate our lives with an absolute, unshakable faith in the fidelity of our vision. We believe that when we open our eyes, we are opening a window onto an objective reality, allowing the truth of the world to flood in. We point to the sky and say it is blue. We look at a rose and declare it is red. We see the leaves and agree they are green. We treat color as an inherent property of the object itself, as fundamental to its nature as its weight or its shape. But this belief, which forms the aesthetic foundation of your entire life, is a profound neurological illusion. It is a convenient lie told to you by your brain to help you categorize and survive in a universe that is, in reality, utterly devoid of color. If we were to strip away the biological machinery of human perception and look at the universe as it truly exists, we would find a silent, colorless ocean of energy. Out there, beyond the bone walls of your skull, there is no red, no blue, and no green. There is only electromagnetic radiation, waves of varying lengths and frequencies oscillating through the void. These waves possess no aesthetic qualities. They are simply data points, mathematical vibrations moving through space. A wavelength of 700 nanometers is not red. It is just a distance. It becomes red only when it crashes into the specific biology of a human retina and triggers a cascade of electrochemical reactions. Consider the terrifying isolation of your own brain. It sits encased in total darkness within your skull, floating in fluid, completely cut off from the outside world. It has never seen the sun. It has never touched a flower. All it receives are spikes of electricity, coded pulses traveling down the optic nerve. From this raw, abstract data, your brain performs a miracle of fabrication. It acts not as a passive mirror reflecting the world, but as a proactive projector. It interprets the frequency of the electrical signal and paints a color onto the internal canvas of your consciousness. The vivid Technicolor movie you call reality is a post-production effect, a simulation rendered in the darkroom of your mind. This realization transforms our understanding of perception from a passive act of witnessing into an active act of hallucination. We are living inside a controlled hallucination that happens to agree with the hallucinations of those around us, simply because we share the same genetic hardware. But this consensus is fragile. We assume that when we both look at a strawberry, we are seeing the same red. But we have absolutely no way to verify this. Your internal experience of red could be identical to my internal experience of green, and we would never know. We would both call it red because we were taught the label. But the subjective quality, the qualia, remains forever locked inside the private theater of our own minds. We are alone in our perception, sharing a vocabulary, but perhaps not the experience. Furthermore, this neural painting is a drastic oversimplification of the truth. Our eyes are not cameras, they are filters. They are evolutionary sensors designed to discard the vast majority of reality. The electromagnetic spectrum is immense, ranging from gamma rays to radio waves. Yet, our eyes are tuned to detect only a microscopic sliver of this reality, the tiny band of frequencies we call visible light. We are blind to the ultraviolet patterns on a flower that a bee sees. We are oblivious to the infrared heat signatures that a snake perceives. These realities are just as present, just as physical, and just as real as the colors we see, but our brains simply do not render them. We are walking through a universe teeming with invisible information, confident that we are seeing the whole picture, when in fact we are peering through a keyhole. The illusion deepens when we consider the emotional and psychological layers we add to this fabrication. Color is not just a visual tag, it is a code. Why does red signal danger, passion, and blood? Why does blue signal calm or sadness? These are not properties of the wavelengths. They are software updates installed by evolution and culture. We overlay a narrative of feeling onto a canvas of physics. The warmth of a yellow sun is a psychological interpretation of a frequency, not a physical truth of the star itself. Perception is never neutral. It is always loaded with the baggage of our history and our biology. This leads us to a humbling and slightly ominous conclusion. The world you experience is not the world as it is, but the world as you are. You are not navigating an objective reality. You are navigating a user interface designed for the survival of a primate. The colors, the sounds, the smells, these are the icons on the desktop, not the code running the machine. To realize this is to wake up from the dream of objectivity. It forces you to take responsibility for your own perceptions. If the color isn't out there, but in here, then you are the creator of the beauty you admire and the ugliness you fear. We are not spectators looking out at the universe. We are the universe, observing itself through a specific, limited, and beautifully deceptive lens. The neural paintbrush is always at work, tinting the gray static of existence into a story we can bear to live in. And while the painting may be an illusion, the act of painting it is the most real thing we do. We are trapped in the gallery of our own minds, surrounded by masterpieces of our own making, mistaking the art for the artist and the map for the territory. 16. The suicide machine. Why identity is just a pattern. We have been seduced by the glossy, convenient promises of science fiction. We watch characters step confidently into shimmering chambers, dissolving into beams of light, only to rematerialize instantly on a distant planet, intact and unchanged. We accept this narrative of teleportation as a futuristic mode of travel, a faster version of a train or a plane. We imagine it as a continuous journey where our consciousness simply slides from one location to another, unbroken and safe. But this sanitized version of events is a lie. It is a comforting fairy tale that obscures the gruesome, metaphysical horror inherent in the actual physics of teleportation. The truth, confirmed by the cold mechanics of the quantum world, is that you cannot move from here to there without ceasing to exist in between. To teleport is not to travel, it is to die and be born again. They told you teleportation was impossible for solid matter, but they were wrong. In the subatomic realm, scientists have been teleporting quantum states for decades. They take a photon or an atom in one laboratory and make it disappear, only for its exact replica to appear in another laboratory miles away. But the mechanism by which this occurs is not movement in any traditional sense. It is not a ball being thrown across a room. It is the transfer of information. Through the spooky connection of entanglement, the precise quantum configuration of the original particle is extracted and transmitted to a distant twin. But here is the catch, the non-negotiable price exacted by the laws of nature. In the process of extracting that information, the original state must be destroyed. It is an absolute rule. You cannot copy the quantum data and keep the original. To build the new, you must obliterate the old. This shifts the concept of teleportation from a technological wonder to an existential nightmare. Imagine a machine built on these principles, large enough to hold a human being. You step inside. The scanner hums to life, preparing to map the trillions of atoms that compose your body, your brain, and the neural sparks of your memories. But to send you to the destination, the machine does not move your atoms. It strips you of your information. It disassembles you. In the blink of an eye, the you standing in the departure booth is vaporized, reduced to unstructured dust. The information, the blueprint of your soul, is beamed to the arrival pad, where a reservoir of raw biological matter is waiting. There, using the instructions from your destruction, a new body is printed, atom by atom, neuron by neuron. The being that steps out of the receiving booth breathes your breath, thinks your thoughts, and remembers kissing your spouse goodbye just moments ago. It feels, with absolute certainty, that it is you. It has your scars, your jokes, and your secret fears. But is it? Or is it a perfect imposter? A copy that has inherited the life of a man who was just murdered in the other room. If you were the one in the departure booth, your experience would not be a sudden shift in scenery. Your experience would be the flash of the scanner, and then nothing. The darkness. The person on the other side is a new consciousness, spinning up for the first time, inheriting a backstory it didn't live but perfectly remembers. This thought experiment forces us to confront the most unsettling question of identity. What are you? Are you the physical meat and bone, the specific atoms that clump together to make your form? Or are you the pattern, the information encoded within that matter? If you are the matter, then teleportation is suicide. But if you are the pattern, then you are something far more abstract and terrifyingly fragile. You are software running on biological hardware. You are a song that can be played on different instruments. This realization strips away the sanctity of the biological vessel. It suggests that you are transferable, copyable, and ultimately, perhaps, redundant. If we accept that we are patterns, the implications bleed into our current lives. In a way, we are already engaging in a slow, analog form of teleportation every day. When you speak to someone, when you teach a child, when you write a letter, you are transmitting parts of your pattern into a new medium. You are encoding your beliefs, your mannerisms, and your wisdom into the neural networks of other people. You are slowly disassembling the self and rebuilding it in the minds of those you love. We are not discrete, isolated entities anchored in a single body. We are entangled swarms of information, constantly leaking out of our containers and reconstituting ourselves in the world around us. We grieve the loss of the body because we mistake the vessel for the contents. But quantum mechanics whispers that the vessel is irrelevant. The atoms in your body are replaced every few years anyway. You are already a ship of Theseus, a slow-motion teleporter rebuilding yourself day by day. The continuity you feel is an illusion of memory, a story stitched together to hide the fact that you are constantly dying and constantly being reborn. Teleportation just speeds up the process. So, the next time you look in the mirror, ask yourself, is this the face of a permanent being? Or is it just the current display screen for a signal that is passing through? We are transmissions, echoing across the void. The horror of teleportation is not that it kills you. It is that it reveals you were never really there in the way you thought you were. You are a signal, a ghost in the machine, and ghosts can haunt more than one house at a time. Place is temporary. The pattern is everything. 17. Atmosphere of deception. Why we never see the real world. We are born into a conspiracy of perception, a silent agreement to accept a distorted version of reality as the absolute truth. From the moment we can hold a crayon, we are taught the first and most enduring lie of our existence. The sun is yellow. We color it in with golden wax. We look up at the sky and see a warm, amber orb smiling down on us. We bask in what we believe is its golden light. We accept this as a fundamental fact, a cornerstone of our sensory experience. But this belief, anchored in the center of our worldview, is a total fabrication. The sun is not yellow. It is a blinding, furious, full-spectrum white. It contains every color in the visible spectrum, simultaneously, screaming with a brilliance that is structurally incompatible with the way we perceive it. The only reason you see it as yellow is because you are living at the bottom of an ocean of gas that is actively lying to you. The Earth's atmosphere acts as a massive chaotic lens. As the pure white light of the sun hits the upper layers of our air, it collides with molecules of nitrogen and oxygen. This collision acts as a filter, violently scattering the shorter, higher energy wavelengths, the blues and the violets, across the sky. This is why the sky looks blue. It is a spray of scattered light that never made it directly to your eye. The light that remains, the longer wavelengths of yellow, orange, and red, punches through the haze to reach your retina. You are not seeing the sun. You are seeing the debris of a collision. You are seeing the filtered leftovers of a reality that has been stripped of its intensity to make it palatable for your biological hardware. Once you pull on this thread, the entire tapestry of your perceived reality begins to unravel. If the most constant, dominant object in your universe is physically different from how you perceive it, what else is a lie? The yellow sun is not just an atmospheric quirk. It is a devastating metaphor for the human condition. We do not interact with reality directly. We interact with a simulation of reality that has been processed, edited, and color-graded by the atmosphere of our own minds. Just as the Earth filters the light, your brain filters the data. You are never seeing the raw truth of a situation, a person, or a memory. You are seeing the version that survived the scattering effect of your biases, your trauma, your culture, and your expectations. Consider the implications of this cognitive atmosphere. We walk through life convinced that we are objective observers, recording the world like cameras. But a camera does not have a childhood. A camera does not have a history of heartbreak. A camera does not have a history of heartbreak. A camera does not have a fear of abandonment. You do. And every one of those internal structures acts like the nitrogen in the air, scattering the light of objective truth before it can hit your conscious mind. When you look at a person you love, or a person you hate, you are not seeing them as they are in their white light wholeness. You are seeing the yellow version that your mind has constructed. You are seeing the parts of them that fit your narrative, while the inconvenient truths, the blues and violets of their complexity, are scattered into the background noise, ignored and unseen. This is why human connection is so fraught with misunderstanding. We are not fighting about what happened. We are fighting about our renderings. Two people can stand under the same sun, look at the same event, and see two completely different colors because their internal atmospheres are composed of different elements. One sees a gesture of love, the yellow sun, while the other sees a gesture of manipulation, a distorted shade, and both are absolutely convinced that their eyes are telling the truth, but neither is seeing the white light. They are both trapped in their own private weather systems, mistaking their filtered perception for the universal standard. There is a darker layer to this deception. The filter is not just there to deceive, it is there to protect. If you were to look at the sun from the vacuum of space, without the protective blanket of the atmosphere, its pure whiteness would be terrifyingly intense. It is a cold, hard, radioactive brilliance that is hostile to the naked eye. Perhaps our psychological filters serve the same purpose. Perhaps the raw truth of the world, the sheer indifferent chaos of existence, the true complexity of other people, the unfiltered reality of our own mortality, is too bright for us to bear. We need the yellow lie. We need the warmth of the distortion to feel safe. We construct these narratives, these yellow suns, because the white sun of objective reality is a stark, blinding abyss that offers no comfort. Wisdom, then, is not the ability to strip away the atmosphere and stare directly into the blinding light of truth. That is a path to madness. Wisdom is the quiet, clinical recognition of the filter itself. It is the ability to stand under the yellow sky and say, "I see yellow, but I know it is white." It is the humility to distrust your own certainty. It is the understanding that your judgments, your memories, and your deepest convictions are not reflections of the world, but reflections of the atmosphere through which you view the world. We are prisoners of our own biology, locked inside a skull that permits only a sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum to enter, and then subjects that sliver to a rigorous editing process. We are hallucinating a world that is colorful, meaningful, and manageable. To acknowledge this is not to descend into nihilism, but to rise into a higher state of awareness. We stop looking for truth in the appearance of things and start looking for truth in the mechanism of the seeing. We stop mistaking the map for the territory. We accept that we are living in an atmosphere of deception, and in that acceptance, we find the only clarity available to us, the knowledge that we are the lens, not the eye. 18. The unstoppable current. You are always in motion. We are seduced by the concept of the pause. We construct our lives around the belief that we can stop, rest, and step out of the flow of existence. We treat stillness as a sanctuary, a place where we can catch our breath and where the consequences of our actions are temporarily suspended. We tell ourselves that we are stuck in a rut, or waiting for the right moment, or simply holding still. We believe that inaction is a state of neutrality, a zero-sum game where nothing is lost and nothing is gained. But this belief is a dangerous hallucination. There is no such thing as a pause button in the universe. You are currently hurtling through a dimension you cannot see at a speed you cannot comprehend, and there is absolutely no way to get off the ride. To understand this, we must strip away our biological intuition and look at the cold geometry of space-time. Physics tells us that we exist in a four-dimensional universe, 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. According to the theory of relativity, everything in the universe is always moving through this 4-dimensional fabric at the speed of light. When you are moving through space, walking, driving, flying, you are diverting some of that velocity into the spatial dimensions, which technically slows your passage through time. But when you sit perfectly still, when you lock your muscles and quiet your breath, you are not stopping. You are doing the exact opposite. You are diverting all of your cosmic velocity into the dimension of time. You are rocketing toward the future at maximum speed. This means that sitting still is an act of supreme motion. You are a passenger on a train that has no brakes, no reverse gear, and no windows, barreling down a track that is being built the instant before the wheels touch it. The landscape behind you, your past, is not just left behind, it is annihilated. The corridor with no door behind you is a terrifyingly accurate description of our reality. Every second you exist, the door slams shut on the second that preceded it. You cannot go back to fix a mistake. You cannot return to a moment of joy. You cannot reclaim the breath you just took. The bridge is burning behind you with every step, forcing you into the unknown territory of the next moment. This relentless momentum turns the human body into a site of constant, quiet violence. Even as you sit in a chair, appearing frozen to the naked eye, a biological storm is raging inside you. Cells are dividing, DNA is replicating, and making errors. Telomeres are shortening, and neurons are firing and fading. You are not a static object. You are a colony of events. The person who sat down in the chair is not the same person who will stand up. You are dying and being reborn in a continuous loop. A ship of Theseus made of flesh and bone. The you of 5 minutes ago is dead. They are a memory, a ghost stored in the neural patterns of the you that exists now. You are the serial killer of your past selves, sacrificing them moment by moment to fuel your journey forward. The psychological weight of this truth is crushing. We suffer because we refuse to accept the velocity of our existence. We cling to nostalgia, which is nothing more than the pain of looking backward at a receding shoreline that we can never reach again. We suffer from anxiety, which is the vertigo of looking forward at the tracks rushing toward us, fearing a collision we cannot predict. And most tragically, we suffer from the illusion of procrastination. We think we can save time or kill time. But time is not a resource you can hoard in a bank account. It is a fire that burns whether you use the heat or not. When you procrastinate, you are not pausing the game. You are burning your turn. You are watching the scenery fly by while refusing to take the wheel, but the car is moving just as fast. However, there is a dark kind of liberation in accepting the unstoppable current. If you cannot stop, if you cannot pause, and if you cannot go back, then the pressure to hold on evaporates. You cannot hold on to anything. The sand will always slip through your fingers. The moment you try to capture a second, it is already a memory. This realization forces you into a state of radical immediacy. It demands that you stop treating your life as a rehearsal for a future that may never arrive, or a museum for a past that is already gone. You must realize that stillness is a disguise time wears when it wants to move quiet. The silence you feel in a quiet room is not emptiness. It is the roar of the engine. It is the sound of your own impermanence. Instead of fearing this motion, you can merge with it. You can stop trying to be a rock in the river and start being the water. You can recognize that you are not an object traveling through time. You are the process of time unfolding. You are the clock. You are the ticking. So the next time you feel stuck, remember the physics. You are not stuck. You are moving at the speed of existence. You are evolving, aging, and becoming simply by the act of enduring. The only choice you have is not whether you move, but how you occupy the vehicle. Will you sit in the back, eyes closed, pretending you are stationary while the world rushes by? Or will you open your eyes to the blur, accept the violence of the speed, and decide to steer? The current is unstoppable, but the navigation is yours. 19. Reality on demand. How observation curates the world. We are raised to trust in a solid world, a reality of fixed objects, defined locations, and consistent rules that exist whether we are watching or not. This is the bedrock of our sanity. But the simple, devastating double-slit experiment demolishes this certainty. It reveals a truth so counterintuitive that it permanently fractures our worldview. The experiment shows that when we are not looking, reality behaves like a diffuse, uncertain wave of pure probability. Yet, the very instant we do look to find it, this wave collapses into a single, localized particle. This instantaneous shift suggests the universe is forced to choose a state by the very act of observation. Reality, then, is not a fixed stage. It is an interactive script, rewritten every time we open our eyes. This makes the world profoundly unsteady. If a single particle can travel through two slits at once when unobserved, but only one slit when watched, then reality is not composed of facts, but of possibilities. Our attention, our consciousness, becomes the needle that threads one single possibility into being, discarding all others. At this point, physics instantly bleeds into philosophy. We are no longer just asking how particles behave. We are asking what it means to exist, and whether anything can be real without a witness. This becomes deeply personal. Are you solid, or are you probabilistic? Is your identity a coherent self, or just the sum total of collapsed possibilities, observed into being by others? And perhaps most critically, by yourself. The solid world you trust is more like a shadow theater. Interference patterns, representing a wave of potential, only make sense when no one is looking. The moment you try to pin them down, they vanish, leaving just a single dot on a screen, a single outcome where a web of potential once existed. This raises the most fundamental questions. Is the moon still there when no one looks? If you truly sit with this, an existential vertigo sets in, as if the floor of certainty has vanished. We are suspended in a sea of potential, living a quiet, unsettling truth. Nothing is real until it is measured. And if measurement requires an observer, then consciousness is not a passive spectator. It is an active participant, a co-creator, a necessary ingredient in the recipe of what is. This loops directly back to your own sense of self. You realize that when no one sees you, when no one reflects you back to yourself, you begin to lose definition, to feel less real, to drift at the edges of certainty. This is not a psychological weakness. It is the quantum structure of being echoing into your human experience. The deep, primal need to be witnessed, understood, and loved is not just emotional. It is ontological. It is the mechanism by which we anchor our personal waveform into a single, coherent version of the self. This lens changes how you see your past. It is not a fixed line of concrete events. It is a series of possible pasts. The very act of remembering is a form of measurement, collapsing the haze of memory into one singular narrative, one you. But this comes at the cost of all other possible yous. The ones who chose differently, spoke differently, or walked different paths. How many realities have you denied? How many versions of yourself have you collapsed, simply by focusing on one story? Here, the truth hits. Reality isn't solid. It is selected. It is not discovered. It is curated, moment by moment, by interaction and observation. This doesn't mean nothing is real. It means everything could be. And what becomes real is not necessarily the most logical or probable version. It is simply the one that gets observed. The act of paying attention becomes a sacred, creative force. It literally gives birth to the world you inhabit. The people you see, the choices you make, they are all interference patterns waiting to be measured, to be seen, to be loved, and to be. Suddenly, the old saying "you create your own reality" shifts from New Age fluff to a chilling echo of quantum mechanics. It's what the pioneers of physics tried to tell us. Reality is not what is, it is what responds. And that response depends entirely on you, on your presence, on your gaze. You are not separate from the world, observing it from behind a glass pane. You are woven into it, and your act of seeing is not passive. It is formative. You must live differently with this knowledge. You are not just navigating a map, you are drawing it. You understand that people, too, are not solid. They are waves of potential until they are truly seen, until their waveform is collapsed by someone who says, "I see you." That act alone can define them, can make them real. And if you can do that for others, you can do it for yourself. Perhaps healing is just that. Looking again, measuring again, collapsing a different version of your past by choosing to observe a new pattern. Maybe trauma is the result of an observation that got frozen, measured too early, and held too long. The pain of being forced to believe that one version is the only version that could have happened. This allows you to entertain the radical idea that your identity, your future, your values are not fixed. The rigidity you've clung to isn't safety. It's the fear of dissolving into uncertainty. But the truth is, you are uncertainty, and always were. To live fully is to allow multiple truths to coexist until you collapse one into being, always knowing that what you choose to see changes what is there, and what you ignore fades back into pure possibility. This is the secret. You are not separate from the world. You are the observer it needs to become real. 20. The geometry of fate. How mass shapes your path. We were all taught the simple story of gravity, a narrative defined by Isaac Newton. It was described as a force, an invisible rope that tethers us to the earth, holds the moon in orbit, and pulls an apple to the ground. This explanation was clean, intuitive, and felt complete. But Albert Einstein, a century ago, proposed a reality that is far stranger, deeper, and more profoundly unsettling. He revealed that gravity is not a force at all, in the way we think of a push or a pull. Instead, gravity is the consequence of a warped universe. It is a bending of the very fabric of space-time itself. According to Einstein, any object with mass, from a single particle to a star, deforms the shape of reality around it, much like a heavy bowling ball placed on a stretched rubber sheet. The sheet curves under the weight. Now, if you roll a smaller marble nearby, it doesn't get pulled toward the ball by some mysterious force. It simply follows the curve in the sheet, traveling the straightest path available to it on a now bent surface. This is what we experience as gravity. We are not being yanked toward the ground. We are falling along an invisible curve in space-time, a path carved by the immense mass of the Earth. Once you truly internalize this concept, the world shifts beneath your feet, philosophically. What we mistook for attraction is actually architecture. We are not being pulled. We are following the geometry of the space we inhabit. This immediately becomes a powerful metaphor for our own lives. How many of your free decisions were truly free? And how many were simply you, like that marble, following invisible curves in your path? Curves bent long ago by the immense mass of your family, your culture, your trauma, or your deepest longings. Einstein's genius was in seeing that space and time are not the static, passive backdrop of our lives. They are a dynamic, flexible, responsive fabric. This reframes our entire emotional landscape. What is love, if not a warping of emotional space-time? A person's presence, their mass, becomes so significant that they bend the reality around them, and others find themselves caught in that new orbit, their paths altered. And what is grief? Grief is the shape of the absence. It is the profound warping left behind when someone of immense emotional mass disappears. The space doesn't just return to flat. It stays hollow, bent, and our lives for years keep veering around this gravity well that still shapes our path, even though its source is gone. Black holes are this concept made literal. Pain and mass so dense that they bend the world, and even light cannot escape. We can apply this to our own minds, our core beliefs, our traumas, our habits. These are indentations, deep curves in the structure of our consciousness. Our reactions are often not conscious choices, but just objects sliding down these pre-carved paths. This offers a new map for healing. Healing is not about fighting the pull or resisting the fall. Healing is about reshaping the space. It is the slow, intentional work of adding new mass, new meanings, new habits, new relationships, to create new, healthier curves in the fabric of the self. True presence is the act of noticing the path you are on. In that moment of awareness, you gain the ability to shift it. Your life is not a straight line. It is a complex curvature traced in 4 dimensions. Every person you meet alters that shape, leaving a dent or a wrinkle. The most meaningful ones leave wells so deep you are still moving around them decades later. This is the human equivalent of gravity. We are constantly shaping each other's reality, bending the paths of those around us just by existing, just by mattering. This is both a terrifying responsibility and a beautiful truth. You matter, literally. Your mass, your presence, curves the future of others. The goal, then, is not to escape this gravity. It is to understand that the reason you return to old patterns is not weakness, but inertia on a curved path. The only way to change course is to shift the space itself. We are all just falling freely, surfing the curves left by the masses we orbit, guided by a universe that bends reality so that even stillness is motion. 21. The echo of light. Why you live in a museum of the past. We are conditioned to trust our senses, to believe that seeing is believing. We operate under the assumption that when we open our eyes, we are witnessing the world as it unfolds. A theater of truth happening in real time. But this core assumption is a profound illusion. Everything you perceive, without exception, is from the past. This is not a philosophical metaphor about memory. It is a literal, inarguable, physical fact. The photons bouncing off a face across the room, just as much as the light from a distant star, are already relics by the time they reach your eye. Light, though fast, is not instantaneous. It requires time to travel. For objects in your room, that delay is a near imperceptible nanosecond, but it is not zero. This tiny gap, this infinitesimal lag, is the crack that shatters the illusion of immediacy. You are not seeing now. You are at best seeing just a moment ago. When we scale this principle to the cosmos, the implications become staggering. The light from our own moon, our closest celestial neighbor, is already 1.3 seconds old by the time it reaches your retina. You are always gazing at a ghost, a moment in history that has already expired. When you stretch that gaze to the Andromeda Galaxy, the nearest major galaxy to our own, you are seeing light that began its journey 2.5 million years ago. The photons just touching your eye left their source long before Homo sapiens ever formed a coherent sentence. This reframes your entire relationship with the universe. Space is not just vast, it is ancient. Vision is not immediate, it is archival. The present, the true present, is a moment you can never grasp, a target you can never hit. You are perpetually living in a museum of what was. This built-in delay has profound consequences for our lives, not just in astronomy, but in our human interactions. We live as if now is observable, as if we can judge people for who they are in this moment. But our reactions are always, unavoidably, to echoes. We are responding to light that has already left its source, to facial expressions that may have already changed, to glances that are no longer being cast. This complicates more than just vision. It complicates all understanding. We are perpetually behind, forever reconstructing the world seconds, or even years, late. This may be the root of human miscommunication. The image someone sees of you is already out of date, and the version of them you are reacting to is a ghost. We live in a hall of mirrors, chasing the presence of others through reflections that are delayed by physics and perception. The old adage about first impressions becomes even more absurd. That impression wasn't of the real present you at all. It was of the version of you that light permitted them to see, a version already fading into history. If that impression sticks, it sticks to a ghost. This lag isn't just a curiosity. It's the mechanism of our emotional lives. Love, in this context, becomes an act of profound forgiveness. It is the willingness to embrace the image of someone as they were, while trusting that who they are now is close enough. This grace, if extended to ourselves, is the beginning of healing. We must recognize that our own view of our past is also delayed, distorted, and approximate. Clarity is not seeing the truth, but accepting the residue. This physical lag also reframes grief. Grief is so hard to escape because the image of the person we lost still lingers, like starlight, arriving in our senses long after their physical presence is gone. The brain, not built to grasp this cosmic delay, confuses this old, arriving light for a current presence. Closure is not forgetting. It is learning to see the delay, to accept that the sacred image you hold is old and not current. True presence is impossible. The closest we can come is to be aware of the lag, to accept that we are always looking at what was. This awareness grounds us. It deepens our wonder. We are not just seeing the world. We are engaging in a form of archaeology, digging up light that left its source before we arrived. Even your own reflection is a ghost. By the time you see yourself, you are already older. You never meet yourself. You only meet the you that just left. We are always one step behind, catching up to a world that is forever just ahead. 22. The power of proximity. Why true strength is invisible. We live in a civilization that fetishizes scale. We are conditioned to believe that power is synonymous with reach, that influence is defined by how many eyes are watching, and that strength is measured by the magnitude of the impact. We worship the forces that command storms, the armies that conquer continents, and the gravity that drags entire solar systems through the void. We assume that for something to be powerful, it must be vast, visible, and loud. But this obsession with size is a fundamental misunderstanding of the universe's architecture. The cosmos does not hide its greatest power in the expanse of the vacuum or the crushing mass of a black hole. It hides it in the smallest, most claustrophobic space imaginable. The strongest force in existence is one you will never see, never feel, and never escape. It is the strong nuclear force, and it teaches us a terrifying lesson. True power acts only at point-blank range. To understand the nature of this force, you must look into the heart of matter, into the nucleus of the atom. Here, a violent, silent war is raging every second of your existence. The nucleus is composed of protons and neutrons. Protons are positively charged, and according to the laws of electromagnetism, like charges repel one another with ferocious intensity. By all rights, every atom in your body should instantly explode, tearing itself apart as the protons scream to escape their confinement. But they don't. They are held in check by the strong nuclear force, a binding agent so inconceivably powerful that it overrides the natural hatred protons have for one another. This force is 100 times stronger than electromagnetism, and a staggering 100 octillion times stronger than gravity. It is the titan of the subatomic world, the only thing standing between form and chaos. However, this titan has a flaw, or perhaps a condition, that defies our intuition. Unlike gravity, which stretches its weak fingers across infinite distances to caress the edge of the universe, the strong nuclear force dies instantly if the distance increases even slightly. It operates only within the femtometer scale of the nucleus. If you move two particles just a fraction of a hair's breadth apart, beyond the reach of this force, the bond vanishes completely, as if it never existed. The strongest force in the universe is utterly impotent at a distance. It demands intimacy. It requires proximity. It has no reach. It has only grip. This physical reality serves as a devastating critique of our modern understanding of strength. We strive for dominance, for a wide sphere of influence, believing that we are safer if we can control things from afar. But the physics of the nucleus suggests that this is a delusion. Real strength, the kind that holds a structure together against the entropy of the universe, cannot be projected. It must be inhabited. It acts not through the vacuum of space, but through the tension of contact. This transforms the atom from a building block into a metaphor for the human condition. We are, in essence, social nuclei. We are collections of contradictory impulses, volatile emotions, and repelling needs, all threatening to tear us apart from the inside out. The only thing that keeps a person, a family, or a society coherent is a strong force that functions like a bond, not a command. Consider the relationships in your life. We often mistake the gravity of social obligation or the electromagnetism of attraction for true connection. But these are weak forces. They can be disrupted by distance or time. The true binding energy, the strong force of human existence, is the intimacy that survives the repulsion of conflict. Just as the proton stays bound to its neighbor, despite the electromagnetic urge to flee, true loyalty holds people together even when their natures clash. This is not because the conflict is gone, but because the proximity of the bond is stronger than the repulsion of the ego. This is why long-distance strength is an oxymoron. You cannot hold someone together from across the room. You cannot fix a soul from a podium. You must be close enough to risk the explosion in order to maintain the structure. This leads to a chilling realization about fragility. We tend to think of large things as strong and small things as weak. But the atom teaches us that fragility is a function of distance. The moment you allow a gap to form between the core elements of your life, between your values and your actions, between you and the ones you love, the strong force evaporates. It does not fade slowly. It cuts off. Once you drift beyond that critical threshold of intimacy, you are left to the mercy of the weaker forces. Gravity will pull you down. Entropy will scatter you. The protection of the strong force is absolute, but its range is unforgiving. Therefore, the pursuit of space and distance in the name of freedom is often a pursuit of disintegration. We think we want room to breathe, but what we often achieve is the loss of the only force capable of holding us together. The nucleus does not survive by giving its protons space. It survives by holding them in a tight, vibrating tension. Strength is not the ability to stand alone. It is the ability to withstand the incredible pressure of being bound to another. It is the courage to close the gap, to eliminate the void, and to exist in the terrifyingly small space where the strongest force in the universe does its work. Ultimately, this redefines power. Power is not about how far your voice carries. It is about what holds fast when the world tries to pull it apart. It is the invisible, silent, short-range intensity that binds the core. The next time you look for strength, do not look to the horizon. Look to the center. Look to the spaces so small they have no room for lies. That is where the power lives. It doesn't reach far, but it never lets go. 23. The leak of light. Why nothing is truly lost. We have spent generations fearing the void. In our cosmologies, our myths, and our nightmares, we have designated the black hole as the ultimate antagonist of existence. It is the cosmic drain, the final punctuation mark at the end of this sentence of life. We were taught that the black hole is a region of space where gravity is so overwhelming, so infinite in its hunger, that it creates a boundary known as the event horizon, a line of no return. Across this threshold, we believed, lies total erasure. Light cannot escape. Matter is crushed into a singularity. Information, the very blueprint of what makes a star or a person, is deleted from the universe. Because of this, the black hole became our perfect metaphor for absolute loss, for the silence of death, and for the dark, inaccessible corners of the human psyche where we bury the things we cannot bear to look at. We treat our traumas, our deepest shames, and our profound griefs as internal singularities. We shove them down into the gravity well of the subconscious, believing that if we push them deep enough, past our own mental event horizon, they will vanish. We believe that we can create a perfect prison for our pain, a place from which no signal can ever return. But this belief, both in astrophysics and in psychology, relies on a flawed understanding of how the universe handles information. The universe, it turns out, is a hoarder. It refuses to throw anything away. For decades, the information paradox haunted physics. It pitted the immovable object of general relativity, which says black holes destroy everything, against the unstoppable force of quantum mechanics, which says information is eternal and conserved. The stalemate was broken by a revelation that changed our understanding of death itself. Black holes are not perfectly black. They leak. Through a subtle, ghostly process known as Hawking radiation, these monsters of gravity are constantly, slowly, and inexorably giving their substance back to the universe. To understand this, you must visualize the empty space at the edge of the event horizon. We think of a vacuum as empty, but in the quantum world, emptiness is a boiling sea of energy. Virtual particles, pairs of matter and antimatter, are constantly popping into existence and annihilating each other in the blink of an eye. But at the edge of a black hole, something strange happens. One half of the pair falls into the abyss, trapped forever. The other half, stranded without a partner to annihilate, steals a tiny fraction of energy from the black hole itself and escapes into the universe as a real particle. This means the black hole is paying for its meal with its own life. It is losing mass. It is evaporating. It is taking the stuff it swallowed and re-encoding it, radiating it back out into the cosmos in a scrambled, unrecognizable, but fundamentally preserved form. The black hole is not a tomb. It is a transformation engine. It is a slow-motion storyteller that insists on whispering the secrets it consumed, particle by particle, over eons of time. This physical reality shatters the illusion of the perfect burial. If even a black hole, nature's most perfect trap, cannot keep a secret, what makes you think you can? We are all walking event horizons, wrapping our gravity around memories we wish to destroy. But the laws of physics apply to the internal world as well as the external. You cannot destroy the energy of your past. You can only repress it. And repression is not erasure. It is merely a delay. The things you have swallowed, the words you didn't say, the loves you lost, the anger you choked down, are not gone. They are trapped in your internal singularity, yes, but they are leaking. They manifest as the hawking radiation of the soul. They escape as the sudden anxiety that wakes you at 3 a.m. They radiate as the recurring dream you can't shake. They leak out in the trembling of your hands, in your sudden overreactions to small failures, in the patterns of self-sabotage that repeat with mathematical precision. You think you are hiding the darkness, but the darkness is radiating a signal that shapes your entire life. This realization forces us to redefine healing. We often think of healing as an excavation, a violent digging up of the past to remove the rot, but the metaphor of the black hole suggests a different path: evaporation. The black hole dies not by being blown apart, but by slowly, patiently radiating its mass away until it is gone. Perhaps we too heal by allowing our shadows to leak. We heal by letting the information escape, bit by bit, transforming the heavy, crushing gravity of trauma into the light of acknowledgement. We must come to terms with the fact that loss is never absolute. The person you grieve is gone from the visible spectrum, yes, but the information of their existence, the impact they had on your neural pathways, the way they bent the space-time of your life, remains. It radiates from the hole they left behind. To live in a universe where black holes leak is to live in a universe that allows for legacy, for echo, and for the persistence of truth. So when you feel the weight of your own internal darkness, do not mistake it for a dead end. It is a dense, hot, active region that is currently rewriting your history. You are not broken because you are carrying a void. You are complex. You are not failing because the pain keeps coming back. You are evaporating it. You are evaporating it. You are a system that is designed to process the heavy, impossible things and turn them back into light. The universe wastes nothing, not even collapse. What you call a ghost is just the proof that energy cannot die. You are still radiating, and that is the only evidence of existence you need. 24. The 8-minute lag. Why love and grief are echoes of the past. We anchor our sanity to the sun. We rely on it as the ultimate constant, the golden promise that rises every morning to banish the dark. We organize our days, our crops, and our very biology around its rhythmic presence. But this sense of security is based on a fundamental deception. We assume that when we look up, we are seeing the sun as it is now. In reality, we are staring at a ghost. Light, despite being the fastest traveler in the universe, is not instantaneous. It must traverse the 150 million kilometers of cold vacuum between the star and our eyes, a journey that takes exactly 8 minutes and 20 seconds. This means that if the sun were to explode or simply vanish this very instant, you would not know. You would continue to drink your coffee, walk your dog, and feel the warmth on your skin for another 8 minutes, blissfully ignorant that the source of your life had already been extinguished. This cosmic delay reveals a terrifying truth about the nature of existence. We are perpetually living in the past. The now that you think you are inhabiting is an illusion. You are bathing in old light, reacting to a universe that has already moved on. This is not merely an astronomical curiosity. It is the inescapable condition of all perception. Whether it is the light from a distant star or the image of a person sitting across the table from you, there is always a gap between the event and your awareness of it. We are trapped in a state of existential latency, reacting to a reality that is always slightly out of date. When we apply this physics to the landscape of human emotion, the 8-minute lag becomes a profound metaphor for the mechanics of the heart, particularly in how we process love and grief. We tend to view grief as the immediate reaction to a loss, but physics suggests that grief is actually the moment the light finally stops arriving. When a relationship ends or a loved one dies, the source is gone. The star has burned out. Yet, for a time, sometimes days, sometimes years, the light they generated continues to travel toward us. We still see their influence, we still feel the warmth of their memory, and our neural pathways still fire as if they are present. This explains the strange, surreal numbness of early loss, often dismissed as psychological denial. But perhaps denial is not a weakness. Perhaps it is simply the lag time of the soul. We continue to act as if the person is there because, in our internal sensory world, they are. The echoes are still bouncing around the chambers of the self. The photons of their presence are still striking the retina of the mind. We are the inhabitants of Earth during those 8 minutes after the sun has died, walking through a phantom daylight, unable to grasp the darkness that has already occurred. This lag implies that we are often in relationships with ghosts. How many connections in your life are actually dead stars? How many people have you drifted away from, or who have drifted away from you? But you haven't realized it yet because the rituals of friendship, the light, keep arriving. You send a text, you share a memory, and you mistake the echo of the bond for the bond itself. We assume continuity because we fear the void, so we cling to the residual glow, ignoring the fact that the source may have gone cold years ago. True heartbreak occurs when the lag finally catches up to the reality. It is that sudden, crushing moment when the sky finally goes black, when the last photon arrives, and we are left with the undeniable truth of the absence. This is why closure is so elusive. We are trying to close a door on a room that is still illuminated. We are trying to say goodbye to someone our brain insists is still standing there. The brain, a machine built for prediction and pattern recognition, struggles to update its model of the world when the data is delayed. It prefers the comforting lie of the old light to the harsh truth of the new dark. However, there is a strange grace in this delay. If we felt the full violence of every loss the instant it happened, we might be destroyed by the shock. The lag acts as a buffer, a cosmic shock absorber that allows us to process the end of things in increments. It gives us the time to adjust to the cooling temperature of our lives. It allows us to say goodbye to the echoes when we weren't ready to say goodbye to the source. To live with this awareness is to live with a profound, melancholy reverence for the present. It compels us to look at the people we love with the understanding that we are seeing them through a delay. It reminds us that the light is borrowed and that it will not last forever. We stop taking the warmth for granted when we realize it is a transmission from the past. We begin to understand that every moment of connection is a fragile arrival, a message sent across a distance that we can never fully close. We learn to honor the light while it shines, not because it is permanent, but precisely because we know that, eventually, the 8 minutes will run out. 25. The stillness of light, a metaphor for human momentum. We live under the tyranny of a single dominating number, 299,792,458 meters per second. This is the speed of light, the cosmic speed limit, the one constant that physicists told us was non-negotiable. We were raised on the dogma that light is the restless spirit of the universe, a force that defines motion itself. It escapes stars, traverses galaxies, and illuminates our world, never pausing, never resting, never looking back. Because we exist in a culture that worships velocity, we adopted the photon as our spiritual totem. We convinced ourselves that to be alive is to be fast. We equated momentum with meaning and stillness with death. We built our lives around the fear that if we stopped moving, we would cease to matter, just as a photon that stops moving ceases to be light. But this foundational belief, like so many others we cling to, turned out to be context-dependent. In the hushed, sterile environments of advanced physics laboratories, scientists achieved the impossible. They didn't just break the speed limit. They shattered the concept of the limit itself. By passing light through a Bose-Einstein condensate, a cloud of atoms supercooled to mere fractions of a degree above absolute zero, they managed to drag the fastest thing in the universe to a crawl. In this exotic, dense, and incredibly cold medium, light did not race. It hesitated. It slowed to the speed of a bicycle, then a crawl, and finally, in a moment that defies all intuition, it stopped completely. It was frozen in space, trapped in a state of suspended animation, held within the atoms like a fly in amber. This scientific rupture does more than rewrite textbooks. It offers a profound, devastating critique of the human condition. It forces us to ask, if the most absolute, unstoppable force in the cosmos can be brought to a standstill by a change in its environment, what does that say about us? We often tell ourselves that our frantic pace is a character trait. We say, I'm just high-strung, or my mind just races, or I can't relax, it's just who I am. We view our internal velocity as a fixed identity, an immutable law of our personal physics. But the frozen photon argues otherwise. It suggests that your speed is not your nature. It is a symptom of your medium. You are likely moving at breakneck speed not because you are designed to, but because you are passing through a vacuum. You are existing in an emotional and spiritual void that offers no resistance, no texture, and no density. In a vacuum, light has no choice but to travel at its maximum velocity. Similarly, in a life devoid of deep connection, devoid of profound purpose, or devoid of the cold, dense gravity of honest introspection, you have no choice but to race. Your anxiety, your rushing thoughts, and your inability to sit still are not flaws in your engine. They are indications that you are driving on a frictionless road. You are running because there is nothing in your atmosphere substantial enough to catch you. This realization completely reframes the concept of stopping. In our current narrative, we view stopping as a crash, a failure, or a terrifying void where the demons catch up. But when scientists stopped light, it didn't vanish. It didn't die. It transformed. The energy of the light was transferred into the atoms of the cloud, becoming a stored pattern. The light became information. It became a ghost image, a potentiality waiting to be released. When the control lasers were switched back on, the light re-emerged from the atoms and continued on its journey, perfectly preserved. This is the metaphor we desperately need. Slowing down is not about cessation. It is about storage. It is about processing. It is about allowing the frenetic energy of your life to be absorbed into a medium of stillness so that it can be understood. When you enter a state of deep meditation, or when you are stopped in your tracks by a moment of overwhelming awe, or when you sit in the heavy, dense silence of shared grief, you are creating a Bose-Einstein condensate for your soul. You are lowering the temperature of your existence enough to catch the light. In that suspension, the fleeting becomes infinite. The blurring streak of your days resolves into a clear image. We run because we are terrified that if we stop, we will disappear. But the physics tells us that when light stops, it becomes more real, not less. It becomes a message paused mid-flight. It allows the information carried in the beam to be read. How much of your own life have you missed because you were traveling too fast to decode the signal? How many insights, how many memories, how many truths have flashed by you as unreadable streaks because you refused to enter a medium dense enough to slow them down? This puts the onus on us, to curate our environment. We must seek out the cold clouds, the places and people that offer the right kind of resistance. We need the gravity of deep relationships that pull on us, slowing our escape velocity. We need the chill of honest reflection that freezes our reactive patterns. We need to build containers for our light. If you feel like you are careening out of control, do not try to fix yourself by applying brakes you don't have. Instead, change the medium you are moving through. Find the density. Find the stillness. Stop trying to outrun your own existence and allow yourself to be held in suspension. You are not a shark that dies if it stops swimming. You are a photon that holds the secrets of the universe. But those secrets can only be revealed when you finally, impossibly, come to a stop. 26. The atomic mirror. How reality reflects the self. We were taught that mirrors are objects of glass, that to see ourselves requires a large, polished, external surface. But physics, in its relentless probing of the small, has revealed something far more profound. The smallest conceivable thing, a single, isolated atom, can be manipulated to reflect light with such precision that it behaves as a literal mirror. It doesn't just sit there. It actively responds to individual photons, bouncing them back. This revelation shatters not just our sense of scale but our entire understanding of meaning. It tells us that the power to reflect, which we associate with complex consciousness and self-awareness, is not a late-stage invention. It is a property built into the fundamental structure of matter itself. Reflection is not an act. It is a property of the universe. If a single atom can perform this act, then what else in your life is a mirror? This physical fact becomes a devastatingly accurate metaphor. A single moment, a quiet word, a sudden silence, or even a deep wound can act as an atomic mirror, bouncing your own internal state back at you. You begin to wonder, what in your life has reflected something you weren't ready to see? What single microscopic moment showed you more of yourself than any polished glass ever could? Perhaps these moments weren't grand or cinematic. Perhaps they were atomic in scale, nearly invisible, but no less powerful. We are, in fact, constantly surrounded by mirrors, but most of them don't look like mirrors at all. They look like arguments, like losses, like strange coincidences, or like people we find inexplicably difficult. Something about the way they push against us causes our own unacknowledged self to bounce back, making us flinch, think, or change. This suggests the secret to growth is not in finding better teachers, but in learning to read the reflections the universe is already giving you. This becomes a spiritual principle. It means that even when you feel invisible, too small, too broken, or too insignificant to matter, you are still participating. By your very nature, you are still reflecting the light that touches you. You are still capable of responding and shaping how it leaves. Perhaps this is what healing truly is. Not the erasure of pain, but the conscious redirection of what reaches you. The choice of what kind of mirror you will be. In this light, even suffering takes on a new function. What if the people who hurt you most didn't invent your pain, but simply acted as a mirror, illuminating the fractures that were already there? And what if you have done the same to others, not by intention, but by nature, just as an atom reflects not by choice, but by function? We are all just bouncing our pain, our light, our fears, and our joy across the invisible spaces between us, shaping one another's perception through proximity and interaction. Every encounter becomes a form of light, every word a photon, every relationship a complex series of subtle, angled reflections. This awareness clarifies everything. You start to see where your energy is landing and what kind of surfaces you are encountering. Some people absorb you, some distort you, some refract you. But the rare, profound connections are with those who reflect you cleanly. They don't just offer flattery, they show you your truth. They are the mirrors that bounce your own energy back to you, shaped just enough for you to finally understand it. This is what it truly means to be seen. Not just to be validated, but to be reflected accurately, bravely, and sometimes even painfully. This redefines what it means to hold space for someone. It is not to absorb their pain or to judge it. It is to become a clean, conscious mirror, reflecting what is given with neutrality, presence, and care. If a single atom can do this, imagine what a person can do. Perhaps consciousness itself is not an emergent ghost, but this fundamental ability to reflect reality and respond to it. In this way, the atom is functionally conscious. If the universe is full of such reflections, then you are not just a self, you are a surface. The life you live is not just your story. It is a pattern of reflection, stitched together by the light that has passed through you and been changed by you. This is not small or meaningless. It is the very mechanism by which the universe becomes visible to itself, one atom, one moment, one person at a time. 27. The probable breach. Why no wall is truly solid. We are trained from birth to respect the architecture of denial. We are taught that a wall is an absolute statement, a physical decree of nomo. We learn early on that mass cannot occupy the same space as other mass, that barriers are there to define the limits of our agency, and that when a door is locked, it is finished. This understanding of the world is linear, logical, and crushing. It suggests that to overcome an obstacle, you must possess energy greater than the resistance of the barrier. You must climb over, smash through, or dig on. If you lack that energy, you are stopped. Physics, in this classical sense, is a tyrant. It tells you that your limits are hard, fixed, and unforgiving. But this entire worldview, built on the foundation of macroscopic common sense, turns out to be a fragile illusion when viewed through the lens of the quantum universe. Deep in the subatomic basement of reality, the rules of solidity disintegrate. In this realm, a particle encountering a barrier, it does not have the energy to break, does not necessarily bounce back. It does not accept defeat. Instead, it performs a miraculous act of disappearing and reappearing. It passes directly through the obstacle as if the wall were made of smoke. This phenomenon is known as quantum tunneling, and it is not a theoretical loophole or a mathematical trick. It is the fundamental engine of existence. Without it, the sun would not shine, because hydrogen atoms would simply bounce off each other instead of fusing. Without it, your brain would not function, as the chemical signals that constitute your thoughts rely on electrons tunneling across synapses. The universe is built on the premise that walls are not real. The mechanism behind this is disturbing to the classical mind. It relies on the fact that a particle is not a hard, distinct marble. It is a wave of probability, a smeared-out field of could-be. When this wave hits a barrier, it doesn't stop abruptly. A small tail of the wave extends into and through the barrier, lingering on the other side. This tail represents a non-zero chance, however small, that the particle is actually already there. The wall is not a solid stop. It is merely a region where the probability drops drastically, but it never drops to zero. There is always a chance, written into the math of the cosmos, that the impossible will simply happen. This shatters our psychological relationship with failure. How many times have you walked away from a dream, a relationship, or a goal because you hit a wall? You calculated the odds, measured your energy against the resistance, and concluded that it was impossible. But quantum tunneling suggests that impossible is often just a lazy word for improbable. The failures you experienced may not have been final verdicts on your capability. They may have simply been snapshots of a moment where the probability wave hadn't yet collapsed in your favor. You were standing at the door, and the math said no 1,000 times. But the 1,001st time, the math might have flickered, and the wall might have become a window. This reframes the concept of persistence. We usually think of persistence as a battering ram, a violent, exhausting exertion of will against the world. But quantum persistence is different. It is not about force, it is about frequency and proximity. To tunnel through a barrier, a particle doesn't need to get stronger. It just needs to keep hitting the wall. It needs to maintain its position near the boundary long enough for the laws of probability to tilt. This suggests that success is not always about overcoming. Sometimes, it is about waiting. It is about existing in the space of the no long enough for it to become a yes. This insight applies intimately to our own identities. We often view ourselves as fixed entities trapped by our limitations. We say, "I am not the kind of person who can do that," or "I will never get over this." We build walls out of our trauma and our narratives. But if particles can tunnel, perhaps selves can too. Perhaps the version of you that is healed, successful, or free is not on the other side of a mountain you have to climb. Perhaps that version is already existing as a probability wave on the other side of the wall, waiting for your current self to phase through. The transformation you seek might not require a massive influx of energy or a dramatic breakthrough. It might simply require a subtle shift in your internal frequency. A quiet recalibration that allows you to slip through the cracks of your own resistance. This is the quantum shift of the soul. Not a leap, but a phasing. It explains why some changes happen suddenly, inexplicably, after years of stagnation. The wall didn't break. You just finally tunneled. We can extend this grace to others. When we see someone stuck behind a barrier of addiction, of fear, of ignorance, we often try to pull them over or judge them for not climbing. But true compassion might look like standing with them at the wall, holding space, and waiting for their probability wave to shift. We wait for the moment of tunneling, knowing that the barrier is porous in ways we cannot see. Ultimately, quantum tunneling teaches us to live with a radical, quiet hope. It is a hope that ignores the apparent solidity of the situation. It is the knowledge that the universe is strictly probabilistic, which means that absolute finality is a myth. The closed door is not the end of the story. It is just a region of low probability. If you stay close enough, if you keep showing up, and if you refuse to accept the optical illusion of the wall, you might find that you are suddenly, miraculously, on the other side. You didn't break the world to get there. You just proved that the world was never as solid as it pretended to be. 28. The delayed narrator. Why you are an echo of your actions. We exist within a fortress of self-deception, built upon the foundational belief that we are the masters of our own vessel. You perceive yourself as the pilot of your body, seated at the control panel of consciousness, viewing the world through the windshield of your eyes, in real time. You believe that when a decision is made, you are the one making it. When a danger is perceived, you are the one reacting. And when a word is spoken, you are the one choosing it. This sense of agency is the bedrock of your identity. It tells you that you are present, active, and in charge. But this is a lie. The terrifying and liberating truth, confirmed by the mechanics of neuroscience and the laws of physics, is that your conscious mind is not the pilot. It is the historian. It is the press secretary. It is a narrator sitting in a windowless room, frantically writing a script to explain actions that have already taken place without its permission. The deception begins with the hardware. We assume our senses are transparent windows, transmitting reality instantly. But biology is slow. When light hits your retina, it triggers a chemical cascade. That signal must then travel as an electrical impulse along the optic nerve, navigating the complex web of the brain's processing centers. It must be decoded, interpreted, filtered against memory, and stitched together into a coherent image. This process takes time, somewhere between 200 and 500 milliseconds. To a computer, that is an eternity. To a human, it is the difference between the present and the past. By the time you see the world has already moved on. You are perpetually living in a delayed broadcast, witnessing a reconstruction of reality that is half a second old. Your brain, knowing that you could not survive the madness of living in a permanent lag, performs a masterful editing trick. It backdates your experience. It synchronizes the delayed audio and video tracks of your life and presents them to you as now. But this editing room floor is where the illusion of free will begins to bleed. But if your conscious awareness is delayed, then your reactions, which often happen instantly, must originate from somewhere else. When you touch a hot stove, your hand pulls away long before your conscious mind registers the pain or decides to move. Your body acted. The preconscious machinery made the executive decision. Your conscious mind arrived milliseconds later, looked at the situation, and claimed credit for the action, telling you, "I pulled my hand away because it was hot." This reveals the unsettling architecture of the self. The I you identify with, the voice in your head, the thinker, the worrier, is not the origin of your behavior. It is a post-hoc rationalization engine. It is a storyteller designed to create a sense of continuity in a life that is actually being driven by deep, automatic, and ancient subroutines. You are not the one initiating the kiss. You are the one explaining why you did it after the lips have already met. You are not the one swerving the car to avoid the accident. You are the one gasping in shock after the car is already safe. You are always, structurally and unavoidably, the last to know what you are doing. This transforms your life into a series of echoes. You are walking through a hall of mirrors where the reflection moves just before you do. This explains the profound dissonance we often feel. The sensation of watching ourselves speak, or the confusion of acting in ways we didn't intend. When you snap at a loved one in anger and immediately think, "Why did I do that?" you are witnessing the lag in real time. The embodied, reactive self struck out based on a trigger, and the narrator is left scrambling to find a justification, to weave a story that makes the aggression fit with your self-image. We spend our lives judging our narrator for the actions of an actor we cannot control, but only observe. However, there is a profound power in accepting this demotion. If the conscious mind is the narrator, then we can stop trying to force it to be the pilot. We can recognize that true brilliance, what we call flow, instinct, or genius, lives in the gap. It lives in the 200 milliseconds before the narrator wakes up. Athletes, musicians, and artists know this state well. They perform best when the I shuts up, when the delay is bypassed, and the preconscious intelligence is allowed to drive the car without the historian grabbing the wheel. The obsession with being present is, in a way, a trap, because you physically cannot be present. You can only be a witness to the immediate past. This realization invites a radical compassion. We are all living in the lag. We are all reacting to ghosts, guided by machinery that operates faster than our ability to understand it. When we misunderstand each other, when we miss the timing of a joke or a gesture, it is because we are two delayed broadcasts trying to sync up in a universe that doesn't pause. We are shadows trying to high-five. Ultimately, the delayed narrator teaches us that identity is not a fixed point of control, but a fluid process of interpretation. You are the story you tell yourself about the things your body does. You are the meaning you assign to the echo. And while you may not be the pilot, you are the one who gets to decide what the journey means. The event happens in the dark, but the explanation happens in the light of your awareness. You are always late to your own life, but perhaps it is in that delay, in that breathless, retrospective gap, that the beauty of being human is found. We are the echo that learns to listen to itself. 29. The glorious interruption. Why life is a rebellion against chaos. The universe has a fundamental, non-negotiable death wish. If you look at the cosmos through the cold, impartial lens of physics, you will find that it is driven by a singular, relentless ambition to unravel. This is the mandate of the second law of thermodynamics, the most unforgiving rule in all of science. It states that entropy, the measure of disorder, randomness, and useless energy, must always increase within a closed system. The arrow of time points in only one direction, from the organized to the disorganized, from the complex to the simple, and from the concentrated to the dispersed. Left to its own devices, reality seeks the state of maximum probability, which is a state of uniform, lukewarm dust. Buildings crumble, iron rusts, stars burn out, and memories fade. This is not an accident. It is the statistical destiny of existence to slide into the void of total incoherence. Against this backdrop of cosmic decay, the existence of life is not just surprising. It is an act of staggering defiance. Life is a paradox. It is a localized reversal of the universal flow. A phenomenon that looks at the inevitable slide into chaos and screams no. In a universe that demands everything fall apart, life insists on coming together. It takes scattered, chaotic atoms and binds them into the rigid, hyper-organized double helix of DNA. It takes raw chemical noise and orchestrates it into the symphony of a conscious mind. It creates cells, walls, organs, and civilizations, pockets of profound, improbable order in a sea of increasing mess. We are, in the most literal sense, a rebellion. But we are not a rebellion that overthrows the government. We are a rebellion that steals from the treasury. We do not violate the second law, we exploit it. We are what physicists call dissipative structures. We maintain our internal order by aggressively consuming energy from our environment and exporting disorder elsewhere. We eat the sun via plants. We burn fuel and we exhale heat and waste. We pay for our internal complexity by accelerating the entropy of the universe around us. We are engines of chaos that produce a byproduct of beauty. We are burning the furniture to keep the house warm, surfing the very wave of decay that seeks to drown us. This thermodynamic reality frames the human condition in a light that is both tragic and heroic. It explains why effort is the fundamental currency of life. Order is not free. It is an uphill battle against the gravity of the universe. It takes energy to build a house, but no energy for it to fall down. It takes energy to maintain a relationship, but no energy for it to drift apart. It takes immense energy to remember, to learn, and to love, while forgetting and apathy require nothing at all. We are swimming upstream against a current that wants to wash us away into the ocean of sameness. The exhaustion you feel at the end of the day is the physical cost of resisting the void. This creates a profound existential beauty. If the universe tends toward disorder, then every act of creation is a sacred resistance. When you write a poem, you are imposing syntax on random noise. When you build a friendship, you are creating a structure of connection where there was once only isolation. When you love someone, you are engaging in the ultimate act of anti-entropy. You are holding a specific, complex pattern, the person, the bond, the shared history, in sharp focus against a world that is constantly trying to blur everything into oblivion. Love is the refusal to let the specific dissolve into the general. It is the insistence that this arrangement of atoms matters, and this connection must be preserved, even if the universe disagrees. We are, essentially, entropy's artists. We are sculpting meaning out of ash. We are stacking cards in a collapsing house, fully aware that the wind is rising. The tragedy, of course, is that the house always wins. The second law is patient. Eventually, the energy runs out. Eventually, the energy runs out. The biological machinery fails, the dissipative structure collapses, and we return to the equilibrium of the dust. Death is simply the moment the rebellion ends and the laws of physics reclaim their territory. But this inevitability does not make the rebellion futile. It makes it glorious. The fact that we are temporary is what makes our order so precious. A diamond is forever, but a diamond is static. Life is a flame, a process that can only exist while it is burning, while it is consuming, while it is fighting. We are a glorious interruption in the timeline of a dying universe. We are the brief flash of complexity that happens between the Big Bang and the heat death. So, when you look at your life, at the fragility of your body, the fleeting nature of your achievements, the delicate threads of your relationships. Do not despair at their impermanence. Honor the effort it takes to sustain them. Realize that you are a miracle of arrangement. You are a temporary temple built in defiance of the storm. The universe wants you to be dust, and for this brief, shining moment, you have refused. You have chosen to be a song instead. And even though the song will end, and the silence will return, the act of singing it was the only thing that ever pushed back the dark. We do not build to last forever. We build to exist now, to assert form in the face of the void, and to say, I was here, and I held it together. 30. The quantum hum. Why nothing is ever truly still. We were taught that ultimate stillness was a real possibility. We learned of a final resting state beyond all vibration, a theoretical endpoint called absolute zero. This was presented as the coldest conceivable point in the universe, a state where all thermal motion, all chaotic trembling, would finally cease. In this idea, there was a strange comfort, a promise of a final total peace, an escape hatch from the relentless motion of existence. We came to believe that, if the right conditions were met, everything, matter, thought, emotion, chaos, could be paused, held in a perfect frozen silence where not even atoms would tremble. But this, too, is a profound illusion. Quantum mechanics reveals a truth that undermines this entire concept. Even at absolute zero, at the impossible-to-reach 0 Kelvin, when all classical motion is supposed to vanish, there is still movement. There is an irreducible, fundamental baseline of vibration known as quantum zero-point energy. It is the baseline hum of the universe itself, the ghost of motion that cannot be exorcised, the trembling of reality that can never, ever be silenced. This is not a flaw in the system. It is the system itself. This physical law shatters the myth of stillness, not just in physics, but in the very fabric of our lives. It tells us that nothing is ever truly still, not completely, not perfectly. This applies not just to particles, but to you. It applies to your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, your pain, and your hope. Even when you believe you've gone numb, when you think you've stopped caring, when you lie awake in the most profound silence of the night believing you have finally gone quiet, something inside you is still moving. Something is still vibrating at this lowest, most fundamental level. Still alive, still resisting total silence. Perhaps this is the very definition of being human. This non-negotiable quantum inability to ever be entirely, completely still. This realization reframes our darkest moments, the parts of your life that you thought had gone cold, frozen and dead are in fact still holy. Cold is not the absence of motion, it is merely the limit of it. Your quietest, most barren internal landscapes are not voids. They are quantum fields, full of invisible trembling, latent possibility, and hidden energy. The parts of you that you thought had died are still humming, still sending faint signals. This changes how we view depression, burnout, and grief. These states are not true stillness. They are the approach to an impossible silence, an attempt to fall beneath the noise that can never fully succeed. If you have ever felt emotionally paralyzed or mentally frozen, this truth frees you. It confirms that even then, even there, you were still moving, still vibrating, still alive with a residual energy that could never be extinguished. Resilience, then, is not just the grand, visible act of bouncing back. It is the quiet, microscopic quantum refusal to go fully still. This truth extends to your memories and your potential. The loves you thought were lost, the dreams you thought were extinguished, they are not erased. They are just moving slowly, conserving energy like atoms at the edge of absolute zero. Still humming just beneath the threshold of your awareness, waiting for a question, a trigger, a moment of warmth to reanimate them. This teaches a profound patience, a listening for the things already happening beneath the surface. This changes how we see others, especially those who seem distant, shut down, or frozen. We now know that beneath their silence, something is still trembling, still trying not to vanish. Compassion, then, is not about fixing them or restarting them. It is about simply witnessing their hidden motion, their slow quantum refusal to go dark. Hope itself is not a roaring fire. It is this faint background radiation, the leftover hum of possibility after everything else has gone cold. And that flicker, that proof that stillness is never total, is enough. You do not need to roar to be real or burn to be alive. Sometimes it is enough to just not be still. If the universe itself cannot freeze, why should you judge yourself for your own internal trembling? That trembling is not failure. It is truth. It is physics. It is the fundamental, non-negotiable condition of being anything at all. 31. The vertical illusion. How gravity shapes our reality. From our first moments, we are taught to orient ourselves within a fixed vertical world. The sky is up, a place of aspiration, and the ground is down, a place of grounding and stability. This fundamental, gravity-based map is reinforced by every physical experience. We fall down, we climb up, trees grow up, and rain falls down. It feels like an absolute, unchangeable truth of the cosmos. But this physical orientation is not just a map, it is a mental prison. We have allowed this simple directionality to shape our entire framework for meaning, morality, and self-worth. Our very language is soaked in this vertical metaphor, betraying a deep unconscious bias. We rise to the occasion or fall from grace. We feel low when depressed or uplifted by joy. We look down on those we deem inferior and look up to those we admire. This linguistic framework is not an accident. It is the result of projecting our local, physical reality onto the entire human experience. We have built entire moral and spiritual cosmologies on this simple axis. Heaven is above, a reward for ascending, while hell is below, a punishment for falling. Without ever realizing it, we have accepted a universe where up is inherently good, righteous, and aspirational, and down is base, humble, or a failure. We equate our position on a vertical ladder with our purpose. Then science quietly enters, and with a single patient whisper, it shatters this entire worldview. The universe, in its vast, indifferent, and breathtaking scope, has no up or down. It has no preferred direction whatsoever. This is not a philosophical quibble. It is a fundamental law of physics. The down you feel is not a cosmic absolute. It is a purely local phenomenon, an artifact of your biology existing within the specific gravity well of a single planet. Down is merely the vector pointing toward the Earth's center of mass. Up is simply the direction that opposes that one specific pull. It is a relative, provincial concept. To understand this, one only needs to float a few hundred kilometers away into the vacuum of space. There, the entire framework collapses. Astronauts, freed from this anchor, do not walk or fall. They drift and orbit. The human brain, whose entire orientation system is wired by the vestibular system in the inner ear to rely on gravity, screams in confusion. Up is gone. Down is gone. Down is gone. The mind, unmoored, struggles to find its footing. This disorientation often gives way to a profound cognitive shift known as the overview effect. Astronauts no longer see the Earth as below them, the floor of their universe. They see it as a fragile, luminous orb suspended in a borderless, directionless black ocean. They lose the artificial hierarchy of their human perspective, and in its place, they gain a true cosmic one. This forces us to reconcile a deep conflict. Our minds crave orientation, But the cosmos does not share our preference. We are meaning-making creatures who have projected our local metaphors onto an indifferent geometry. We needed an up to dream toward and a down to feel grounded, but the universe operates without them. This realization, however, is not a cause for existential despair. It is the key to a profound and terrifying liberation. If the universe has no up, then there is no cosmic ladder you must climb, no high place of worthiness you must earn. And if the universe has no down, there is no absolute low place of failure you can be condemned to, no bottom you must fear. You are freed from the tyranny of this vertical illusion. Your life is not required to move upward in a linear climb to be deemed successful. Your journey is not about elevation. It is about expansion. Perhaps what you once called falling behind was merely moving along a different, equally valid axis. Perhaps what you called sinking into despair was, in fact, an act of deepening your understanding. The loss of an external, universal direction is not the loss of self. It is the loss of artificial constraints. In this directionless, borderless cosmos, you are finally free to define your own orientation. You become your own true north. You get to decide what forward means for you. Perhaps the true direction of life was never up or down, but inward into awareness and wider into compassion. You are not lost in a void. You are central. You bring your own gravity, the pull of your meaning, the weight of your presence, to a universe that does not care where you go, but honors the fact that you are going at all. 32. The solipsistic mirror. Are you alone in the universe? We navigate our social existence based on a single, unexamined axiom, the belief that we are not alone. When you look into the eyes of another person, you instinctively project a universe behind them. You assume that behind that gaze lies a rich, turbulent inner world identical in nature to your own. A stream of thoughts, a kaleidoscope of emotions, a private theater of memories and fears. You assume that when they smile, they feel joy. When they weep, they feel sorrow. And when they speak, there is a thinker behind the voice. This assumption is the glue that holds civilization together. It is the foundation of empathy, the prerequisite for love, and the basis of all morality. Yet, from a strictly logical and scientific perspective, this foundational belief is an article of pure, blind faith. It is a wager you make every second of every day, with absolutely no way to verify if you have won. This unsettling reality is known in philosophy as the problem of other minds. It stems from a cruel structural limitation of consciousness. You can never, under any circumstances, exit your own head. You are trapped within the boundaries of your own subjectivity. You can observe the external behavior of others, their gestures, their words, their neural activity, but you can never access their experience. You can see a brain scan light up when someone is poked with a needle, but you cannot feel their pain. You can hear them describe the color red, but you cannot know if they are seeing what you are seeing. The only consciousness you have ever verified, the only I you have ever confirmed, is your own. Everything else is inference. This opens the door to a terrifying possibility, a specific strain of existential dread that haunts the edges of sanity. What if you are the only one? What if the universe created only one true observer, and the rest of the population consists of philosophical zombies? These are not the flesh-eating monsters of fiction, but something far more disturbing. Beings that are physically identical to humans, who act and speak and react perfectly, but who possess no inner life. They are biological machines running complex algorithms of behavior. They cry out in pain, but feel nothing. They pledge eternal love, but experience only a chemical cascade. They are perfect mimics, empty vessels designed to simulate presence in a universe that is actually a solipsistic void. If this were true, your life would transform into a grotesque performance. You would be an actor pouring your soul out to an audience of mannequins. Your acts of kindness would be maintenance on machinery. Your arguments would be debugging sessions with faulty code. The intimacy you cherish would be nothing more than a sophisticated interface responding to your inputs. The world becomes a hall of mirrors, where you are endlessly interacting with reflections of your own expectations, searching for a spark of recognition that isn't there. The loneliness of this scenario is absolute. It is a cosmic solitary confinement where the walls are painted with faces. But there is a second possibility, one that is perhaps even more tragic than the solipsistic nightmare. What if everyone else is real? What if the world is teeming with billions of conscious minds, each one burning with the same intensity as yours, but each one is trapped in the same impenetrable isolation? In this scenario, the tragedy is not emptiness, but inaccessibility. We are islands of awareness, separated by oceans of silence we can never cross. We signal to each other with words, with art, with touch, clumsy, low-bandwidth attempts to transmit the fire inside us. But the transmission is never perfect. We are forever shouting across the void, hoping the message is received, but never knowing for sure. In this view, every conversation is a desperate attempt to breach the walls of the skull. We are all prisoners tapping code on the pipes, praying there is someone in the next cell who understands. We hug, we kiss, we merge bodies, but we never merge minds. The barrier remains. The barrier remains. We die alone because we live alone, sealed inside the envelope of our own perceptions. The problem of other minds then becomes the universal human condition, the ache of proximity without access, the perpetual uncertainty of never truly knowing the person sleeping beside you. So how do we live with this? Science offers no bridge. Science offers no bridge. Philosophy offers no comfort. The only resolution lies in a choice. We must choose to believe. We must choose to act as if the lights are on behind the eyes of others. This is not a deduction. It is a rebellion against the void. Empathy is not a reaction to the known. It is a leap of faith into the unknown. When you comfort a crying friend, you are making a defiant wager that their pain is real, that their tears are more than saline, and that their internal world matters as much as your own. To love, then, is the ultimate act of metaphysical bravery. It is the decision to treat a mystery as a person. It is the refusal to succumb to the solipsistic doubt that whispers, "You are alone." It is a declaration that says, "I cannot see your soul, but I will stake my life on its existence." We build our humanity on this fragile, unprovable hypothesis. We construct meaning out of the trust that we are not just shouting into an echo chamber. And perhaps, in the end, it does not matter if we are right. Perhaps the nobility is found not in the proof, but in the reaching. Even if the universe is empty, the act of reaching out to fill it is what makes us real. We define ourselves by the reflection we choose to see in the mirror, even if we have to imagine the face looking back. 33. Mass from nothing. Why your weight comes from motion, not matter. We have been taught a simple, intuitive rule. Mass comes from matter. We believe that substance is stuff, that weight is an inherent property of the solid things we can touch, measure, and hold. This assumption, that for something to be real, it must be made of something, is the foundation of our entire physical worldview. Yet, this comforting idea crumbles when we look closely, deep past the atomic level, into the very heart of the particles that build our world. Here, science has discovered a truth that is profoundly unsettling. Most of the mass in the universe does not come from anything tangible. It arises from the space between things, from pure motion, from the vibration of fields, and from the seething tension of a quantum vacuum that is anything but empty. The evidence for this is found in the proton, a fundamental building block of every atom in your body. Physicists once assumed its mass came from its 3 constituent quarks. But the calculations revealed something staggering. The quarks themselves account for only 1% of the proton's total mass. The other 99% is a phantom. It is born from the energy of the interaction, from the glowing field that binds the quarks, and from the endless, violent churning of quantum activity within that infinitesimally small space. This means the proton is not heavy because of what it is heavy because of what it is doing. Its mass is the result of an internal war of forces, a tension that has no substance but gives the illusion of it. When you multiply this reality across every atom in your body, you arrive at a haunting conclusion. You are 99% motion, not matter. 99% field, not form. The very idea of mass, the thing that grounds you to the earth and gives shape to the cosmos, is an emergent phenomenon, a stable-seeming byproduct of pure instability. This realization is not just physics, it is a philosophical detonation. If your physical mass comes from nothing, then so does your self. You have no solid core, no essential chunk of substance you can point to and call me. Instead, you are a field of tensions, a dance of vibrations, a system of unresolved energies that hold together just long enough to cast the shadow of a stable person. For our entire lives, mass has felt like truth. It felt like the one thing that doesn't lie. But even this, the most fundamental anchor of our reality, turns out to be a consequence of invisible forces. This means space is not empty. It is pregnant with the potential that gives birth to everything you thought was solid. This reframes our search for meaning. If matter itself arises from relational energy, then perhaps so does value. Perhaps you are not defined by your contents, but by your structure, your flow, and the relationships that hold you together. This may be why you've always felt, on some level, hollow. It is not because you are broken. It is because you were built that way. That emptiness is not a flaw. It is the feature, the space that allows emotion, thought, and life to move through you. This principle is reflected in our emotional lives. The heaviest things we carry have no physical mass. Grief has no substance, yet it crushes you. Love has no shape, yet it reshapes your entire world. This is not poetry. It is an echo of the universe's fundamental nature. This leads to the fear. If I am made from nothing, am I truly real? But perhaps realness was never about material. To be real is not to be heavy, but to be held. Not to be substance, but to be in relation. The universe is not made of things. It is made of music, of rhythm, and your mass is the song that results. When you feel your body, know the truth. This is not substance. This is choreography. Force frozen just long enough to let you feel like something. Mass is the shadow of a miracle. And perhaps meaning, like mass, comes not from what you are, but from how you are held together, how you resonate, and how you participate in that dance.